So we'll do some introductions here in a minute, but we can probably pull in a little closer. I definitely need a microphone. If everyone will want to grab a light blue resource guide, I also brought another resource that I printed. You guys can grab one of each of these and then a new pen. There are pens here. So you get a whole book that I wrote out years ago. That actually will tie in.
Oh, thanks.
You didn't expect to be getting big, huge books in mail. Steve expected that, though. That's how I write. Need a pen?
The more you do, it's like, yeah, I do anything, but I just do like you.
I'm cheating too.
Okay.
Both. Yep, grab both. Does everyone have both? Does Steve Richmond want one?
I'm good, Michael Brown.
Well, we
I feel like it was good hand.
But if I say so, Tony asked me to facilitate a conversation on something I feel very passionate about. But first, I want to just make sure I know everyone in the room, and then you know each other, and then you need to respond to at least this one question, and that is, why are you here? Like, what about this conversation or you? Tony said I gotta come if I want to help involve my families. I'm dating Tony, so I have no choice but to be here. You know, whatever. I don't know what your reasons are. You can be totally honest. But just what you're thinking that this is, what you want out of this time, and it's just I guess no arguments. I think it's close to it. Start over here, if I can. No, if you want.
My name is Bryce. I go to the currently graduation. I'm here. I look for opportunities. Each type of opportunity, whether it's with y'all, it's anything that interests me. So just being around an environment with people to motivate each other. Type of way I don't.
Bryce, I'm Michael Brown.
I'm sure we've met like briefly, but
Right now.
Hey y'all, I'm Crystal. I'm here because I'm sorry, I'm here now. But I'm here because I don't know. I just would like to understand the concept of being a life giver. I feel like I already do it, but maybe having some more intentionality to it would help.
Okay, I'm Lauren. I am here because, well, Crystal invited me, and the way she described it sounded interesting. And I don't know, I think that I like learning something.
I'm gonna put it on the spot. I just hear what you're wanting to get out of it, or what you're thinking, or there's no right answers.
Joseph, kind of like what Bryce and Crystal were talking, really learn, grow, especially spiritual development, just kind of walk that Christ life, figure out how to do that better than potential.
Like, are you still teaching? Just look at other people's teaching.
Alonzo, I'm a graduate student at UT. So I'm here because I've had conversations with Toby, just like about both spiritually and as a person. Just to help them.
You know, pathway to consult.
My name's Anthony. I wanted to reach together because I love like the notion of like being a life giver, like the theory of it. Because we had a conversation, like many people like, I just walk around in life and want to experience life givers, right? And we all like know when we are around people who like give us life, and we're, who are gonna give us life. And so, yeah, like, I just want to be a person who gives people life. I don't know if those are the areas, but.
Sounds like a servant.
Yeah.
Servant leadership.
Yeah, I just want to be someone that gets, so I want to learn.
Steve, I am one of the people in Brookside, and I first heard these things 20 years ago. Michael and I have been friends since really the early 90s, and even as he was developing these ideas, because we knew that all of us, I think Tony just said this, but all of us know that we like being in the presence of people who give life. And so mostly we find ourselves asking that question is like, oh, who makes me feel good? With very little thought to, well, how can I develop me that I might give others while being kind? So I love this stuff and I'm really excited about it. So, yeah, excited.
Hey, I'm Brad. And one of the reasons that I'm here is because when Michael was kind of talking through this idea of life givers, kind of contrasted this idea of people that give life and people that take away life, and I immediately thought of people in my experience that have been one or the other. And it was just this visceral kind of response of, I immediately got what he was saying, and those people that just energize you and make you, they give you life. And I just got so excited about this idea of learning how to adapt my kids' practices to kind of fall into that category more.
I'm Darby, and I'll be completely honest, I'm here because Tony invited me. I have no idea what's going on, but I didn't have really anything else planned, so I said, why not?
I love your honest answer. Thank you, Darby, for me. Are you student, Luigi?
I'm a grad student,
A grad student, which
forensic science.
My name is Nadia. I was essentially raised on this theory, so it's something that I'm super familiar with. I'm here because my mom harassed me, and I'm interested to see what didn't go through.
Well, if we've not met, I'm Michael Brown, so I obviously, with Brookside, an elder at the church. But in regards to my practice, I kind of came to Bowling Green State University 28 years ago as the campus minister, the director of crew. Over time, my role has evolved to be more than that and different than that. And I'm going to share some of those principles today, because some of you here are in this space because you're hoping to develop campus ministry through Brookside Prep. And some of you are here because you're just spiritually exploring. Some of you are here because you want personal development. There's a wide variety of individuals here. I just presume that was the case because that's always the case wherever I spend my time. And so I did want to invite you. This is actually, I was just clearing this with Tony. This is going to be the first of 2 sessions. So they keep talking about a series, and I'm going to make it a series. And the reason I'm going to make it a series is I put in your hands really a wide variety of content and just resources. And so I'm going to encourage each of you, because we're not going to hit all these things tonight again. And the older I get and the longer I do these kinds of things, as a life coach, as a spiritual leader, as a consultant in a variety of spaces and places, I no longer give presentations of any sort. I mean, even quite honestly, if I preach on a Sunday morning at Brookside, hopefully it feels more like a conversation than a presentation. And I'm very open to contextualizing anything we're talking about to what comes to mind for you in the moment. Because that's what is education, and that's what you most need. And so I want you to actually feel like, and that's why I actually titled this, well, and just so you know, this little life giver resource guide, I titled it The Conversation. Because I'm inviting you tonight, and if we meet again, and you decide to come and spend some more time with me, I'm inviting you to a conversation, not a presentation, but listen to a presentation. So there really are no tangents. There really are no topics that are off limits. But I'm also, what I've kind of gotten out of the business, and I'm going to have a little bit of an aversion to this, which is even feels funny as I'm sitting here in front of you. I'm kind of trying to get out of the guru business where it's like, hey, I'm gonna come listen to somebody talk about these wise things and then I'm gonna learn things. Because I am convinced, and even not knowing all of you that well, that you can actually explore these things and begin to discover them for yourself. So if you actually get deep into this content I'm giving you today in these 2 resources, a lot of it's there for your taking and for you to grow and learn, even apart from me speaking. And obviously I can give illustrations and I can talk more about it. But I guess what I want to encourage each of you, wherever you are in your spiritual journey or what role you're going to play in campus ministry or Brookside or not Brookside, that you would commit to self-ownership. That you would commit to saying, I'm going to become this kind of person and I'm going to choose my way. Now the cool thing is, and this is me talking as a Christ follower, if you have a relationship with Christ, you have a significant advantage to being able to be a life giver. Before I even talk about what a life giver is, because the Spirit of God lives in you. So just think about that. The God of the universe who spoke the world into existence before there was time now lives in you. The God of the universe who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That's the game changer right there. That in of itself is life-giving, because if you just are in continually awareness of that reality, for those of you who would describe to being a Christ follower, then that's just game changer. That said, I also spend a lot of time with atheists and skeptics and people from different perspectives and spiritual ideologies who also are incredibly life-giving, because they've applied the principles of, I would say, the scriptures and even just world's wisdom, that if you give your life away, you actually find it. Jesus said that, and so it's a beautiful idea that can be actually borrowed even apart from the Spirit of God living in you, but you have that. It's going to be like this river in this fountain of life. So all that to say, I want you to take personal ownership. I want you to think, where am I on this journey? How do I contextualize these conversations in my context, in my world, whether it's in the church, outside the church, the grounds for thought. I'm looking at you guys, I'm not sure. On the racetrack, I don't know, is that a racetrack? It says obstacle course, or Brookside, or Essential Oils. I don't know. I'm just looking at all your shirts. You use Essential Oils. What's your shirt say? No. So all that to say, I want to have a really fun conversation with you. Not a presentation. Let's just have a conversation together. We'll just let the conversation go as long as it goes. And when 8 o'clock hits, I just have to be somewhere at 8:30, and I'll hang out with you as long as you want to hang out with me. But as well, we're sitting here in these seats, and it's the end of the day. If you need to get up and walk around, if I need to stand, just use the restroom. Like, we're not going to take breaks. We're just going to have a conversation just as we were hanging out. And Stone's Throw, if we're hanging out, Juniper, if we're hanging out. Like, let's just be together. Can we just do that? Just be together. So that said, I'm going to actually just kind of show you what I've given you. It's a little bit funny, so I do apologize. I am speaking so much so often at this point. I could have put together a really, really cool branded Brookside, have my designer, who is on my coaching team, redesign it all, change all the language. I didn't do that. All I did was take about 5 resources that I've been using. This Life Giver permeates everything I teach. So whether I'm working with an NFL player, we have 2 clients now, they're NFL players. If I'm working with college athletes, if I'm working with Chick-fil-A, if I'm at a fraternity conference, Life Giver is coming up every single time. If I'm writing curriculum, Life Giver is in it. So I just grabbed a couple things from here, from my kind of toolbox of PDFs. I put them all together, bound them, and then had my guy put a little front page and stick it on the front, and that's what you. So let me tell you what's here in this manual, then I'm going to explain what this cool little thing is. So, Life Giver, so let's just walk through what's here, and then we'll start a conversation. Okay. So if you open up to the first page, this is actually a little discussion tool that I've built around Life Giver. You're going to see it's actually an acrostic. It's C. Risky Josephine, but it has been the same acrostic. Now, I will tell you, I will probably be changing the V. I've been talking about it. I go back and forth, vigorous, vulnerable, vigorous, vulnerable, vigorous, vulnerable, but it still stands as vigorous. So the very first thing on the very first page is, what is a life giver? Someone who's loving, intentional, fun, expressive, generous, inquisitive, vigorous, enthusiastic, yes, and responsive. And And I'm gonna spell out everything, what that looks like in real practice. I appreciate what Brad had to say. It's like, okay, what does that look like? So I just actually did a keynote today via Teams to a corporate client from 1:30 to 2:15. And one of the things I did during that time was I talked about this in the context of diversity and inclusion and equity. It came up, but I talk about the principles, the perspective, the practices, proficiencies, and so that's the stuff that we're going to get very practical. I even kind of put together an LQ or a leadership quotient, life-giving leadership, and you'll see the next few pages. Best qualities of practice of a life giver. 4 bullet points for loving. 4 bullet points for intentionality. 4 bullet points for fun. You can just look through there and talk about this a little bit. And then I put a couple more things in there for you that I think are really fun. Pages 21. Again, these pages are just random, but you'll see them there. When I think about a life giver, I think about 3 key things. People who look closely, who listen carefully, who love extravagantly. And I gave you some more content there. We'll talk about some of that. We'll bounce around. Principles, practices, problems, promises. You see where I am? Love extravagantly. Then the next one is actually I pulled out some content I developed for college-age men. But I do the exact same thing with executives. I do a leadership retreat in Lake Tahoe every year for 40 to 70-year-olds. This is the exact same content I teach. I just rebrand it and put it in different things. What people need, the 5 things that men need, but this is true of women, this is true of old people, this is true of young people. To be known, to be loved, to be trusted, to be empowered, to feel alive. Talk more about that. Okay? And it's actually in the context of genuine friendship. So again, I'm just giving you a quick overview. I'm going to come right back to the beginning here in a minute, but let me say it as simple as this. Christianity, ministry, impact, influence, life-giving is all about one thing. I'm about to narrow it down to one thing. Friendship. That's it. Networking, friendship, career development, relationships, friendship, genuine human connection. Everything in spirituality, everything is about friendship. You know why God saved us? You know why God came? Because he wants to be in a friendship. You know why we do ministry? To be in friendship with him. So that we get a friendship with God. We overcomplicate things so much with this program, and this idea, and this tool, and this. I tell you what, if you're a person who can genuinely move toward people, engaging in genuine friendship, you are now a life giver. Without even knowing what all the LIFEGIVERs are. So this whole section is on friendship, engaging in friendship. Look on page 14. So just keep flipping with me. I'm actually going to talk about the difference between being a skilled conversationalist, how to ask questions, how to be rich, page 15, relaxed, inquisitive, compassionate, and humble, to be in the presence of a rich person. We'll talk more about that. 10 tips to actually building relationships, everything from eye contact to taking off your mask to listening with your face, right? Best prompts. I'm going to give you 7 conversation answers right in this section. And then obviously you're going to see life giver again on page 17. Some of that's going to be repeat, like your reappears there. But I like this because actually a whole section about page 17. What are the qualities of a life taker? We'll talk more about it. That's about page 17. And again, that's review. But then I get another section that you've never seen because I've not talked about this. So I actually started contextualizing it now in the context of being a modern day missionary or being involved in reaching your campus for Christ or being involved in campus ministry through Brookside or whatever those spiritual contexts are. You see where I am? 5 principles of being a cultural insider on campus. Okay, all right. Yeah. I hope this isn't freaking out. Like, wait, he's just moving so fast. We're not teaching anything yet. You know, all I'm doing is just giving you an overview of what resources are here, okay? So hang with me. But I'm gonna give you the 5 principles of being a cultural insider. Because here's the deal, there's two kinds of Christians on campus. Honestly, there's 2 kinds of human beings on campus. Those who are deeply connected from the inside out, and those who are on the outside are trying to be on the inside. One of the reasons people say no thing, you're still in Bowling Green, Ohio. Absolutely. 28 years, you know how much time and energy I've invested in being an insider in this place? I showed up in 1995 with my wife. Lauren was a year old, and we were 8 months pregnant with Justin. And here we showed up, and I was the new director of the campus ministry at Crew. And in 28 years, as I practiced these and began to put these things into practice, I now regularly am talking in conversations with the president. I'm the life and mental health coach for all of BGSU athletics. I launched the first spiritual learning community in the nation called Surge. I still am technically on staff with Crew, but nobody knows it. I mean, all my supporters know it. People at Brookside know it, but on campus, nobody knows me now. So I just continue to find ways to be inside. So why would I give up my insider position to make incredible impact on the inside out? To go somewhere else and make more money, or to be in a cooler place than Bowling Green, which I think Bowling Green's pretty cool, but people differ with me when I say that, right? Well, and if you ask Steve Brisky, if you ask Sandy, if you ask any of us who've been here forever, Rob and Amy Seifert, are you here because of Flatlands? I mean, Flatlands is nice, but that's not what I'm saying. Are you here because of the small? No, that would actually not be a good reason. What we're talking about? Oh, that's the mall that doesn't really exist. We call it the small.
It's got a great thrift store ministry.
Oh, okay, there we go.
No, that's apostrophe. Small.
Small. But no, seriously, the reason we're here is because it goes back to what I said before, relationships, people, human connection. So you can read that. Portrait of Modern Day Missionaries, the next thing in here. I actually have done a lot of training in what it means to be compassion-driven Christian, spirit-saturated saint, evangelistic team player. The 6 different kinds of people involved in God's evangelistic enterprise. There's more on the cultural insider. We can talk more about that. Here's my dream as I give you this. We're going to talk about some of these things tonight. My dream is that between now and the next session, if we do another session, is that you read through both of these things and then you just come saying, okay, on page this, can we talk about this? In this section, can you tell me more about this? Let's interact about this. So you do like the work in behind the scenes, and then we come and we actually just like put the cherry on top. Does that make sense? So Portrait of Modern Day Missionary. Let's keep moving through here. I then have Michael's favorite questions. You guys see that yet? There's a lot. It's pages. Might be close to 300. But one of the things I started doing, if I'm going to be an inquisitive person, and I'm going to actually take intentionality with people, what am I going to say? What kind of questions can I ask? So I've started an inventory of questions. In fact, essentially my PhD program, my doctoral work was in the nature of spiritual questions among undergraduate students. And in my dissertation, there are 930 questions that emerged from the mouths of spiritual people. And I put them all in my dissertation. Some of them are here. But asking about the listener's background, asking the listener's advice and opinion, involving the listener's imagination. You see the categories? Asking for the listener's emotions. Michael's favorite top 10 spiritual transition questions. Right there. I use these. I love being in spiritual conversations with people. You know when they're most effective? When I'm in the role of an insider, and when I have genuine human connection with people. And I'm not looking to feel better about myself or have an agenda or a story to tell at the next Bible study. Fully present. The presence. So, when those happen, it happens. And then I wrote a little article on being a cultural, all the biblical basis of being a cultural insider. Paul said it, I become all things to all men. Ever heard of the term incarnation? The incarnation of Christ, which means Jesus, that God became man. So let me say it this way. The very strategy that God employed to actually save us through coming to earth and becoming one of us becomes actually our methodology for ministry. Incarnational ministry. Being among people. The guy could have just rolled the clouds out, stepped on the clouds and said, I'm here. But no, he came into the manger, you know the Christmas story, obviously, and then he was incarnated. And that's what ministry is too. But we try to be the missionaries who go on the clouds and say, I'm here. Which is exactly not the way God did it in the whole gospel unfolding of history. So, biblical concept of culture, it's a whole article I wrote. When was that? It was a while ago. 2006, 16 years ago. You can read through that. It has all the biblical basis for the things that I'm talking about. And then again, it closes with the Life Giver Leadership Model. I actually taught this to crew in 2015. And there's all some more Life Givers. So that's Life Giver. Now, I wanted to give you this because this is really fun. This is actually something I wrote a couple years ago for Phi Kappa Theta, who is a fraternity. And I'm just going to, not going to take you through all this. I'm going to show you. You turn to the outline on 3 pages in. This entire curriculum was written with the spiritual seeker in mind. That I can put in the hands of a fraternity who most are not even Christ followers, many of which are atheists, and say, people can still explore the spiritual dimension of their life. And then you can see kind of explore your ultimate questions, evaluate your spiritual beliefs. I have different questionnaires, express your spiritual challenges, engage your brothers, because it's a fraternity and spiritual dialogue, examine your spiritual biases, embody your own spiritual values, experiment with spiritual activities. Now, this is a Catholic roots organization, so I met with some priests, I wrote some curriculum on Catholicism. Contextualizing the message, creating a spiritual tool, because there's typically not spiritual tools like this. There's like the Christian literature or the non-Christian literature. But what's the thing in between where you can help people journey and explore and think? Now, for some people, that makes people very nervous. I don't want people to explore, because what if they land somewhere different than I want them to? God is God.
Yes.
God's going to do what God's going to do, and he's fine, and you're fine, and we're all fine, right? So again, this is a really cool resource. And I had a whole box of extra ones, so I just said, I'll just bring them here and hand them out. So it was really cool. It was so fascinating to be spending time with fraternity guys. I've done this with about 1,000 guys at this point. 1,000 men sitting down and talking about beyond belief, because I'm trying to get them to move to action, right? Upward, inward, outward, and then basically wrote a curriculum that I now use. So, that's my introduction. I want you to explore. I want you to kind of dig into these things between now and the next time maybe we meet together. And let's dig into what it means to be a life giver. But first, like, what are some of your initial thoughts, questions, even maybe something I've said already? You're like, okay, I need to unpack that, or I'm curious about. Because that's the longest I'm going to talk all night. Okay, so you're going to engage me, right? Okay. So what are you thinking about as I kind of just hand you these things? Yes, please. And I apologize. I've already. Oh no, Darby. You came back to me just right now.
Don't really know how to say this, but I am kind of almost cautious about this teaching.
Okay.
Because I have been very hurt by being open with people and honest with people. So I'm just kind of curious how we can be this way without the intense emotional trauma that I've been through by being open with people.
Yeah. So let me talk about that for a minute. I appreciate that question. You can be a life giver while maintaining really good boundaries and maintaining safety, emotional safety. And again, you used some interesting phrase already. Open is different than vulnerable. Open is the ability to actually have conversations with people in a private context about any topic, right? Vulnerable is how you connect that idea to my personal story. So sometimes when you begin to do that, because even now, I'm going to be sitting with you here today. I may share a story or two that comes to mind, Darby, or with all of you, but they're probably not going to be my deepest stories. They're not going to be my most intense illustrations. But one of the things I've experienced when I think about openness and honesty is we just need to make sure we're in context where people can actually hear. Which is a little tricky because I've often asked this question. I was in New Orleans a couple weekends ago, and I was talking about the power of friendship. I had a 3.5-hour session on the power of transformative friendship. And interestingly, someone asked me the question that's asked every time I speak. How do I know if I can trust someone? And my response is always the same. I trust you. Which is terrifying. Because you really know if you can't trust someone until you trust them. There's no like evaluation or survey that someone picks up and be able to do that. But all that to say, you're safe here. We can talk openly and honestly. But obviously do so in boundaries. And even as you're interacting out there in the world, trying to be a life giver, I think it's, look, you can be a life giver without divulging all of the various things and sharing things about you and your world. You respond to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I also, like, because you are also saying that there is such things as like takers. So, getting into that almost kind of manipulative relationship with a life taker where they completely train you.
Yeah.
And just, again, it's just something I'm very cautious about.
To not be connected deeply to a life taker. Or being a life taker.
No, being connected.
To a life taker. Yeah.
Because I can trauma from that and stuff.
Of course.
It almost, it reminds me of the idea of if you don't know how to swim, you don't grab onto somebody who knows how to swim because you're gonna drown anyways and you're gonna pull them down with you. So that's what it feels like, I would say.
Thank you for sharing. Other thoughts in the room? But what I've said so far.
I think there's more to trusting a person than just trust and hope it works, right? Like, here, a chair, right? Tony sat in that chair because it looked trustworthy. It was missing a leg. If it appeared to be in bad repair, he probably would have thought, maybe that's right. But now here's where you just hit, and I want to hold up for a second, because unhealthy people have a way of making you feel morally deficient for trusting your instincts. So in other words, if Tony looked at that chair and said, oh, it looks like it's in bad repair, shoved it aside, the chair looks at Tony and goes, what, am I not in a chair? What kind of person are you? You would sit in a chair, you're right, left, right, like, I just didn't feel it. Right? And our instinct isn't always right. But nonetheless, people who are like takers are masters in making you feel like a morally deficient person for not giving them life. And so there's something to learning the art of trust, because there are people you know you wouldn't trust. You know, a guy walking down the street with a bandana over his face and a gun in his hand, that's super easy, right? Not trust. You wouldn't go, well, let's see if he's trustworthy. So, you know. So, like, Michael's right in that you can never finally fully. And that's, see, we want this like final assurance. But if I were that way with chairs, I will only sit down if I have 100% truth that the chair will not, I'm just not going to sit down, it's going to be weird, right? I have to like eventually be like, well, this seems like a good idea. Then occasionally a chair might fall off and I'll feel bad, you know, but nonetheless, we have to risk. So on one hand, we have to risk. On the other hand, I think we have some ability to get inside, right? It's like the chairs. People are like chairs. That's all you
Great metaphor.
What else are you thinking about in regards to some of the things I've already shared? Just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. Any of those strike you as unique?
Well, I personally think of like, especially when we bring up the topic, like 10 years, like it's like a giver. And my year, understanding of the surface level. I just think of like the context, in any context that I like people, I like figures in the Bible. And for like a life figure, you know, they might not even look like a person with a bandana and a gun. You know, who you may unintentionally great people, you know, you may be a life giver unintentionally, you may not know it. You may be a life giver to people unintentionally, you may not know it. So I think in the reading context, we're being a life giver and a life taker to a father. That's just my here outside of this, you know, setting.
Well, let's go there for just a minute. Look at the very first page. Let me just share with you 6 quick bullet points about a life giver. Because obviously we're talking about this in contrast to a life giver. And let me also say this, I don't think there's such a thing as, oh, you're a life giver, and you're a life taker, and you're a life giver, and you're a life taker. I think it's a continuum. And it's in context. There are days when I'm more life-giving than other days. And there's days when I'm more life-taking. So I don't want you to think about them as this dichotomy, like here's a life giver, here's a life taker. It's about growing and developing more into a life-giving person. Just think about it in that terms. And that even as you're a life giver, you might be interacting with another life giver, or someone who's more life-giving on that particular day, or you might be a life taker in the same space with 3 or 4 life takers, but that's gonna have a very different feel. But when you think about life-taking, and this is what's very interesting. Let me just pull back and just say it this way. Any of you taken personality tests, assessments, strengths, finders, Myers-Briggs, I'm all into that, Enneagram, people in the room, you know, we all want to talk and understand ourselves, and so we take these various tests. But what I love about life-giving, it is all about choices, and not about wiring, and not about personality. Life-giving is not for extroverts, but not introverts. Life-giving is about choices. So here's what's really cool. I'm going to give you a little life coaching mini session here real quick. If I was sitting with you not as a pastor, not as an elder, but as a life coach, I would say that 85% of the life you're living today, you've chosen your way into. Now, what typically is happening is the things we're struggling with, we tend to call them circumstances that create them. Things are hard. It's the circumstance outside of me versus the choices that I've made. What's really great about life giving is you can I can choose right now, depending how I'm feeling, to actually give life away. I'm going to talk about what that looks like. So we oftentimes think about everything in your life is either a circumstance or a choice. So even as a real practical exercise, if you're frustrated with something right now in your life, I think Tony, we talked about this before, if there's something you're frustrated with, or if there's something you want to grow in, just take a piece of paper, write at the top of your paper what you are, and then put a line down the middle, put choice column and circumstance column. Like for instance, if you're exhausted today, I'm exhausted. Left side, choices I made to contribute to me being exhausted. Circumstances around me outside of me that can contribute to me being exhausted. It's a simple exercise. But here's what typically happens with human beings. The circumstance list is long. The choice list is short. Which again is very disempowering. Because of all these things, if all the things that I'm experiencing today are because of my circumstances outside of me versus my choices, I can't do a lot. I'm stuck. But if I can actually, as a life coach, if someone does an exercise with me, I'll go and I'll sit and I'll actually look at the list. And oftentimes I'm taking 3, 4, 5, 6 things off the circumstance list and moving into the choice list. It's very unsettling to people, but when they realize it, a perfect example, I'm in line at Starbucks and someone says to me, I said, how you doing today? And said, I'm just exhausted. I'm tired. I always ask the same question. When did you choose to be tired?
Last night.
Well, and that's the thing. Well, first of all, try it sometime. Next time a friend says to you, I'm tired. Say, when did you choose to be tired? They won't know how to respond because they're thinking, I didn't choose to be tired. I just think I'm tired. Well, and I'll say, then what time did you go to bed last night? What did you eat for the last 24 hours? What did you can fill in the blank, but it's like there's a light bulb goes on, like, I went to bed at 2 a.m. Well, so at midnight, when you didn't go to bed, you chose to be tired today. There's no judgment there, but let's just call it what it is. You're tired today. I did this with the football team, actually. I did this exercise with the football team last year. All 105 guys were in the room, and I got tired of them whining about how tired they were. They have no time, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're this, they're that. I was like, okay, let's do the math. You have 168 hours a week. This is actually an important digression. So I said there's 168 hours a week. Let's get the whiteboard. Okay, how long are you in football? And again, grad students say the same thing. Well, you don't know what it's like. I'm a grad student. Grad student life is tired. You know what I mean? And so let's just run the numbers. I started, how many hours of football? How many hours? I'm going to give you 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm going to give you an hour for every meal. You get 3 hours a day to eat. We just started running the math. Am I missing anything? 20 hours for study. You and I both know you're not studying for 20 hours, but we're gonna give you 20 hours for studying. And we just started, Bill, I said, keep talking. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? No. 52 hours a week, completely at their discretion. You're like, wait, that's impossible. Should we run the numbers again? See, the thing is that they were blaming all these circumstances for why they're tired, and why this is this, and why this is this, and they chose their way into this reality. Point being, this is what's very empowering, and I get it, that's a little life coaching, but here's the point. Friends, if you choose, if you sit here today, beginning right now, you can choose life-giving. Now, get the Spirit of God in you, it just got a lot easier. Right? If you're dealing with trauma and you're dealing with different things in your life, it's a lot harder. So I'm just acknowledging there's a variety of contexts that you're in. But the reality is you can choose to be a life taker. So let's talk about a life taker real quick. 6 bullet points. Life takers generally may be preoccupied with what other people think about them. Ooh, this is tricky. If you naturally are prone to be comparing yourselves to others, you're always in the comparison trap, or you always wonder what everyone thinks in every social interaction, you probably aren't a life giver. Because you're going to be adjusting, readjusting, always adjusting. So here's how I like to say it. Imagine walking into every space and place, more interested in people than being interesting to people. That is the core principle of everything I'm going to talk about today. Walking into every space and place, more interested in people than being interested. That, its root, is a life giver. So I'm more interested in you than being interested in you. So what this looks like practically is another way to say it is, when you walk into a space, are you asking the question, who do I see? Or who sees me? Another way of saying the exact same thing. In fact, I'm at the rec center, student rec center, work on campus. I try to whenever I'm in town, 7 days a week. Very important to me. I love my treadmill. I always choose one though where I can actually overlook the second level. Because I love watching people, right? I love studying people. And so I love watching people walk in that through the gate, swipe their card, and there's 2 kinds of people who walk through that. And you can see it all the way from as far away as I am. There's people who walk through that door, and they're basically, who do I see? Where are my people? Who am I going to meet? What am I going to? And I actually have people I've trained to initiate with strangers. And they're initiating with everybody they meet. More interested in them than being interesting to them, right? And actually, one of my 3 words podcasts, I have a podcast that I run called 3 Words Podcast. One of my 3 words phrases is initiate with strangers. And it's exciting. And then you have the other kind of person who walks in, they're wearing a certain kind of tank top. Well, they usually don't wear it anyway because they need a big time where they take off the shirt and show the tank. It's like there's a whole preoccupation. Who sees me? Who sees me? Life giver, life taker. Okay, that's the first thought. They care about people, but only to the degree that they can get something out of them for their personal benefit. That doesn't need much explanation. You get it, right? I'm initiating with you because I want something. So even in ministry, people smell that a mile away. People smell an agenda a mile away. In fact, I direct sales and marketing to the university. Again, one of my roles on campus is I am out there. In fact, I was just doing this. I was at a conference at 49 appointments the last 2 days. In Detroit, trying to sell big conferences at BGSU. My favorite strategy, it's this equilibrium to people when I'm meeting with them. Because I'm there to sell them BGSU and convince them to come. They'll talk about where they've been in the last year. I'm like, honestly, and I mean this sincerely, that place sounds perfect. I don't think you should come to BGSU. Why would you leave there and come here? And they look at you like, but I've now gained credibility because I was being honest. I'm not just looking to get something out of them. I want their best experience for them. I want them to have the best conference experience. If it's not Bowling Green State University, it's not Bowling Green State University. If someone comes to Brookside Church and it's not their best fit and it's not going to be the best place where they can, I don't want them to be there. I'm not going to try to convince them to be there. And the less you try to control people, and the less you're open-handed with people, and the less you have an agenda with people beyond just to simply love them and be in their presence, the more they're sticking around. Because nobody does that. It's counterintuitive, but nobody does that. But Jesus was the same way. Feel free to leave. He said on a couple occasions, right? Jesus, then don't hang out. Right? He wasn't trying to always convince, please. He brought the fullness of himself into everyone's presence, and people were like drawn. Like you, okay? They're stuck in the comparison trap. Now, there is a difference between comparing and comparison. Apostle Paul would say, imitate me as I imitate Christ. That's a good kind of comparing. So I always say comparing is good, comparison is bad. Comparing means if I'm friends with Joseph and I'm seeing this extraordinary stuff in Joseph's life, I'm like, wow, that's cool. I'm watching you. I'm studying you. And I'm like, I want to learn how to do it just that way. I'm comparing myself to Joseph with the goal of actually growing and evolving versus what does Joseph get that and I don't? That's a comparison trap. That's comparison versus comparing. It's like you have something I don't have, confidence, good looks, athleticism, whatever else you have. And I want it, bro. So I'm jealous now. That's the comparison trap. I'm jealous, right? Versus like we both can. They're selfish and make life all about them. The center of the universe. It's one of the reasons I rephrased a question I've used in years of ministry. People often come to me as a mentor. I'm sure Steve and others get the same question. How do I know God's will for my life? And I always go, wrong question. Better question. How does my life fit into God's will? The first question is putting me at the center of everything. How do I know God's will for my life? So I'm the center versus how does my life fit into God's will? Better question. Again, I want you to be self-interested, but I don't want you to be selfish. Self-interested means, Darby, setting boundaries. I'm sorry, you strike me as a toxic person. I'm not going to spend time with you. That's not selfish, that's self-interested. You're taking care of yourself. People in ministry who run themselves ragged 80 hours a week, spend too much time. I've had this conversation with people even in this room. You need rest. You need to take time for yourself. That's not selfish. That's self-interest. That's actually filling up your cup. I know Amy talks a lot about cups and so forth. One of my favorite phrases is empty cups don't pour. So if you show up to whatever situation, that's a life giver. Not talking about a leaky bucket here in a minute. The reality is, life takers typically are leaky. Their cup is empty. And so they're walking into a situation, not interested, but looking to be interesting. Because they're looking for people around them to fill up their cup. So it's interesting even. I joke about this when I talk to fraternity guys or I talk to student athletes. I said, imagine a scenario if people go, my dating relationships aren't working very well. I mean, this life giver goes right back into dating. Let's talk dating. Let's talk marriage. Let's talk friendship. The reason most people are struggling in their dating relationships, let's talk college dating relationships. They don't work. Why don't they work? Because you have two people seeking to get and not give. So one of my principles of dating, I teach it all the time everywhere I go. Date to give, not to get. So think about this. Imagine the crowds of people that head uptown. On Friday night, Thursday night, Saturday night. Imagine if all of them were heading uptown to give. What would the bars even feel like? I'm going to head uptown tonight to give my life away and be a blessing to others. No, people are heading uptown to get, to feel validated, to feel special, to hook up. I mean, whatever. I mean, they're looking to get something from people. No one's up there looking to be a blessing to others so that people become a better version of themselves. But imagine what that would look like. So imagine even a Sunday morning in Brookside, where if everyone who walked in that was a part of the family of Brookside walked in saying, how can I give my life away today? Versus what can I get? By the way, those are actually people that jump from church to church too. Because you're never going to get enough. Which even now, which is why I'm giving you resources saying I need you to do your homework, because you're not going to change because Michael Brown sat here with you for an hour and 45 minutes and just spouted lots of stuff. Okay? It's because you decided, I'm gonna actually apply this, and I'm not gonna seek to wait for that magical whatever that's gonna change me. I'm actually gonna do the work, and I'm gonna study, and I'm gonna become, and I'm gonna grow, and I'm gonna fight through it, I'm gonna do hard things.
Are you saying that people, the life givers jump from church to church, or life takers? jump?
Well, I'm saying people who naturally are coming into a church looking for strictly about what I can get versus what I can give. I'm just gonna use you as an example, Lance. I don't know you that well, but everything I hear about you, I mean, one of the first things you did is you started connecting with these people in this room in our community. You were looking at for one of the first things you were doing. I mean, you said you're here because you want to grow spiritually, but also you've taken the posture from the very beginning of service. How can I help? How can I volunteer? How can I serve? What can I do? Yeah, while you're growing. So again, it's not either or. You can grow and develop, but you're also saying, I'm here to serve too, right? Juneteenth, other things like, aren't you on the executive board now, or are you on the team of leadership of Brave? Right? So you're here because but it's both. It's both. So then finally, two more things. You may have never seen life-giving modeled in their past or current family, social, professional environments. This is actually giving people the benefit of that. Most people have never been around life givers. In fact, most of your families probably aren't. Not to make this bold statement, right? Or it's exhausting, right? It's like, so if your family, if you're not used to, if you've not been raised in that environment, in your college career, you don't hang out with those kind of people. It's like, part of it's like, this might be for some of you the first time you've actually really thought about, wow, this is so unique, because everyone out is, the world and the culture is wired to get. Yes, Bryce.
I think it's very interesting because like I was just thinking to myself like selfish people versus selfless people, and how far along we would be whether you're group of people that people acted more selflessly as opposed to like selfish or like pure intention. And I don't know, that's just the kind of that came to my head, and it's not like a great statement for you to say about your I think like a lot of people in general just aren't. I feel like you're more likely to find more selfish people than you are to find selfless people, right? Like I don't think that I don't agree with you. I don't think that's crazy for you to say. It's like,
well, no, it's crazy in the sense that it's like a little bit shocking. Like, wait, is my family draining? I talk about VDPs versus VIPs. So again, I love ministering and being a life giver to VDPs.
To what?
VDPs.
Define.
I will tell you, I can start filling like very draining people, very difficult people, very divisive people, very dysfunctional people. Like, I'm way into doing that. I love being in their presence. They're not in my inner circle. But see, here's the deal. If I'm choosing to be a life giver in those situations, I'm not looking to get anything from them anyways. What I'm getting is from my inner circle and my friends and my wife and my bros and my people. They're the places where I'm getting refilled so that I can do ministry, so that I can be out there. And so if I'm building a life where there's great relationships, and that's where I think boundaryless people live. It's like I'm wanting that for everyone. I'm walking and I'm looking to get. And so it's exhausting. I feel my tank going down quicker with VDPs. It's just giving me more opportunity to go refill up. Now VIPs, that's who you want to spend time with. Very inquisitive people, very inspiring people, very intentional people. And again, I don't remember all the eyes that I used to have, but there's so, you get the point, right? Inquisitive, intentional, inspiring, right? Invested, interesting, right? Versus draining, dysfunctional, divisive, But again, VDPs, life takers. VIPs, now so there's days I'm probably a VDP. That's my wife, she might think, you're a VDP today, right? So I don't want you to think in terms of I go around as like the life giver and now I'm teaching all the life takers in the room to be like, we're continuing on this continuum, we're kind of working through and wrestling through what that looks like. Okay.
I want to say something.
Please, Crystal.
I like that you said that because.
Said what?
I'm sorry. I was about to get there.
Okay.
But, that you said that you don't always have to be around VIPs, that you can also be around VPs. Because that's the point, right?
It is the point.
Like, to give life to people who may not know how to give life, or may not ever had life given to them, type of thing. So, but to like get life in your inner circle so you can give it away.
Your inner circle and your relationship with God and recharging through prayer and all the different things that just recharge, right? So I think about Jesus. I mean, I think obviously the most extraordinary human being, and I've devoted my entire life to him. And yet the reality is how difficult his earthly walk must have been. The epitome of a life giver in the presence of perpetual life taking. I mean, again, it's just the perfect model of always giving your life away, always giving your life away, always giving your life away. And it's like who was giving a life to Jesus? You know, but he was getting away often with the Lord, slipping away. People are like, no, we got things to do. He's like, no, I need time. So even Jesus, God in the flesh, needed to draw some boundaries, rest. And there are times when he was with the smaller group, right? So again, I don't want to read too much into the Gospels, but that's the sense that we have. So
He also talked a lot about this is how you get life from it. Like, this is how, because it's for the kingdom, you get to take glory in the fact that someone's spitting on you. But it's for the kingdom, and you're good for the kingdom, and therefore it has worth, therefore it gives you life. So I think not only did he pull away to spend time with the Father, but he also, I mean, what the whole Sermon on the Mount is, this is how you do it in the kingdom way, how you walk.
try everything.
Yeah. It's just properly equipping yourself for a battle, I guess.
I think he's, we can only read so far into this, but even his way with the disciples suggests that some of them were more likely to him than others. Like, based on what I get from the disciples, I
For
really
sure.
love how impetuous Peter was. I think it was actually fun for Jesus, which of course, if you go to the Garden of Gethsemane and when they fall asleep, right? Like how desperately life-taking at that moment where he is like sweating blood, he's so overwhelmed. To come and find the ones who are supposed to give him life and have nothing, I imagine that must have been one of the most life-takingest moments for him. Not just because what's going on, but even because he went to the ones who had often given him life and they were self-absorbing.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a massive key towards like life giving or just anybody like in general, right? It feels like us. You need people, or you need those people around you to give you life. But in order to even be able to like, do work. Now, I mean, I think about leaders that I study, you know, of like the burnout that happens, you know, and the peak of their leadership, right? Or why leaders fall, right? It's they constantly give away life, but they never develop that circle around with or that relationship with God, you know, or that prayer life that you're meditating, you know, to receive that life back, you know. So it's just them being constantly the cup that just pouring.
So you're actually talking about something interesting. So I conceptualize the 12 dimensions of a person's life. And I talk a lot about this, but you're talking now about the relational dimension. How we use the relational dimension to be fueled and obviously our romantic relationships, our friendships, our family, there's a lot of different things. But I also wanted to say this, like part of being a life giver is making sure that you are making investments of all the different dimensions of your life. So the emotional dimension, dealing with anger, frustration, being able to manage and express your emotions, the financial dimension, to be able to live within your means. You're outside. So again, these are kind of outside things, but you begin to kind of build out these various, again, choices versus circumstances. You're making an investment. So I want you to get to the point in your own life where you're actually thinking about every choice you make is either an investment, it's either a deposit or a withdrawal from your banking.
Is there a different metaphor?
Huh?
Is there a different metaphor?
You don't like that metaphor?
No.
Why? Yeah. That's the metaphor I use, so. Well, I'm gonna talk about leaky bucket in a second, but here's the point. Everything is either putting something in or putting something out. Putting something in or putting something out. There's no freebie choices. So when you chose to eat for breakfast, when you chose to go to bed, and what you're snacking on from 11 to midnight, it actually can have an effect on how life-giving you are today. Whether you're living in debt, whether you're spending beyond your means, sexual choices in the sexual dimension of your life, emotional, financial, spiritual dimension, where you make. So again, there's a variety, and I don't go into all the dimensions and what that looks like, but we tend to think about things like, I want to be a life giver so I can be praying more, I can be reading my Bible more, I can go to church. No, I'm talking about a holistic perspective to being fully alive. Okay? And all of those things, this is why I take very seriously all of those things, dimensions of my life. I am not going to silo spirituality outside of all those other things. Rest, eating, exercise, finances, sexual choices, dealing with anger, facing my fears, all those things are building into, as you experience me and I experience you, they're all a factor. I'm not telling you that to be overwhelming. Some people feel overwhelmed when I start talking about that. I guess there's so much to think about. But it matters. Okay. Last point of the bullet is that most people suffer from what you're going to feel like with life takers, the leaky bucket syndrome. So here's maybe a different metaphor, might be a little more helpful for you, Narnia, apart from money, is that I picture all of us as a bucket. Or I use the idea of cups, whatever you want. That all of us are leaking. All of us are leaking out life. Because we're broken, we're fallen, we're sinful, we're selfish, we're, all the things that we're sinful, right? So there's all that goes in, so I'm leaking out all the time. Now, as a coach, as a counselor, as a pastor, as someone who spends time with people, I have one of two choices as I encounter a leaky bucket. Even myself, when I look in the mirror, I'm like, I'm feeling leaky. I have one of two choices. I can keep trying to pour more water in the bucket, or I can actually find a way to seal the leaks. So you've been with people like this. Maybe you are at times people like this. We all are, right? Where it's like, and I get this with kids, because I'm like, I get a lot of dating conversations. People talk about dating. Okay, so I talk about dating, and it's like, this person doesn't love me. This person doesn't love me anymore. I was being very dramatic on this thing, but this person doesn't love me anymore. I'm like, oh my gosh, when's the last time they told you they loved you? Yesterday. But they haven't told me today. It's like, it didn't last. It leaked right out. So, you think with people like that, it's like you just poured all this into them, and it's like the day later, it's as though it wasn't even like there, because the bucket doesn't hold the water. So you need to, and I need to, think about, if I'm leaking out all the time, where's the leak? And seal the leak. Versus trying to keep adding more water. Imagine a bucket and a huge leak in it, you just put the hose in it, it's like, I'm gonna keep adding, I've added hundreds of gallons of water. Versus saying, I'm just gonna put a gallon of water in there, but I'm gonna seal that leak with duct tape or duct tape works on everything, right? But whatever, like, how do you seal that? So I like to do the work more of the sealing and the deeper work than the Band-Aids. But point being, with life giving, life taking, we're all leaking. So when you're in the presence of a life taker, they're leaking profusely. That's the point. Tony?
I was gonna say, just think about what you're saying. It feels, because you're saying I'm like, oh shoot, it's probably one of it, like those kind of things. I think it's because it's difficult to tend to leaks. It's more difficult to tend to leaks than it is to add. Very vague. I'll give you an example, and just transparently. I'll share this. I was talking to someone at the university today that was helping me and helping me with a nonprofit work. And they were telling me, that, one of my strengths is not interaction. I love people, right? And they were saying, I have a structural problem with my organization, right? And so instead of really trying to fix the structural problem, I was just continue to improve because I love people, like, and I want to see people be the best people, and so like my solutions like center around people, but it's truly, I think, like another thing, both ends, like also it's harder to touch into the leak, of
Yes.
the organization too.
Yes.
Because that's my weakness. And so it's easier to operate in my strength as opposed to tend to my weakness.
Thanks for sharing your vulnerability. As I hear that, I'm thinking about the difference between becoming and behaving. Because even with life giving, it's a two-pronged approach to becoming more of a life giver. And again, think about this, the conversation we're having right now. Your future spouses are going to be thank me for this. Because this stuff is going to affect that. Children are going to be thankful you had this conversation. Colleagues, friends, I mean, this is who doesn't want to be this person? Who doesn't want to be around people like this? I mean, this is what everyone wants for themselves and for like in their deepest part of who they are. But so in this journey, in this curriculum, in the things we're talking about, I want you to think about who am I becoming from the inside out, and then how am I behaving? So there's a mixture of stuff in all of these conversations, like becoming, making deposits in your life, right? Your schedule, designing the week, your time management, your energy management, your attitude management, your mindset, your attitude, all those things you're becoming, so that you're not having to work so hard at being a life giver, behaving like a life giver. You are, in essence, becoming that. But I don't want to overstate that, because there's also practices. There's very specific things you can do, which is why you have a little section of the 10 practices being, here's helpful hints to, here's this, is that there's ways to actually make choices that actually move you forward in that kind of as well. So it's both becoming and behaving. But here's the deal, the very basis of all of that is belief. The most important thing about you, says A.W. Tozer, is what comes into your mind when you think about God. I would say the second most important thing about you is what comes into your mind when you think about yourself. Your identity, who you are. I had a conversation today with a very high-level executive whose CEO said, it's time for you to find a new job. I'm not going to fire you yet. You have time. You're not welcome here. You haven't raised enough money. You haven't done this, and this. I think he's one of the most extraordinary leaders I know. And I think the issues with the CEO. Doesn't matter. He's being given his marching orders. He says to me, literally this is real time. This morning, he texted me, he said, you got 15 minutes today? He said, I need a little DMB affirmation. My identity is a little shaky right now because I'm seeing myself through his eyes. And I'm believing what is not true. So we had a great conversation this morning. And how do you see yourself? Like when you walk into a space, do you feel like you have something to give? Or do you feel like you have nothing? So part of that is your identity, who you're becoming, what you believe to be true of yourself. See how that all works together? Because if you believe yourself, if you believe that you're enough, again, you're naturally going to be more life-giving. If you feel like you're always inadequate, you're probably going to be felt by people as life-taking. That your identity is intact, regardless of how people view you or see you. But again, think how freeing that is. Think how freeing it would be to be able to walk into your organization, or your major, or your class, or wherever your spaces and places are, and to be like, I'm here. I'm not going to be defining myself or judging myself based upon what everyone thinks of me. I flat out had this conversation with I was with 1,000 fraternity guys at this New Orleans thing, and I said, here's the deal. Right now, you're making choices. Right now, you're making choices to try to please people that you won't be talking to 3 years from now, and won't remember their name 5 years from now. But they're all, I mean, literally, you're gonna drop the pin in that room. Because we're always trying to perform and make sure how do people feel, am I okay? And so there's some identity work that needs to be done there. I mean, that's the very root, that becoming, that believing, and then behaving. Becoming and believing fuel the behavior. So, okay, I'm gonna stop there for a second. Any thoughts, any questions? We've done one page, one section, one page. Narnia?
How is it possible to be a life giver without God? Like, I can't grasp that. Like, where do you get your, like, I can't fathom the idea of going into a situation or having the energy to go into situations or having the drive.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I think part of it is we're all made in the image of God, so I think by nature, we really do want to make the world a better place. I think even with our fallenness, there's some really good qualities there. I'm just saying from strictly experience that there's a lot of unselfish, life-giving people who do not have a relationship with God. Now, for you personally, you're like, well, where's that drive going to come? Well, their drive is they want to make, maybe it may be, and here's the challenge. There's no way to fully separate myself from my identity as a life coach or as a mentor, or as a campus mentor, all those things, like I'm tied to them to some degree. And let's be honest, when you've had a great spiritual conversation, or if you've been in a situation where you feel like you've been life-giving, you do gain from that. You actually feel like you're more alive. So is that selfish? Is that, so even I think people who are wise, Narnia, wise people realize, if I walk in every situation looking out for myself as number one and looking at what I'm going to get, this doesn't work for me. Just because maybe you've done that for 10 years and go, that's not working. And so they begin to actually, just a quick little note now to hear what Bryce has to say. I have actually a little practice I do every week called Why Wednesdays. So on my calendar, it's part of my rhythms, Why Wednesdays. This is what I do. Every Wednesday I ask myself why. Why do I do the things that I do? And are the things that I'm regularly doing achieving the outcomes that I want? And I take some real inventory on Wednesdays, midweek. Because oftentimes we're doing the same things and it's like, it's not working. Why are we keep doing those things? So we're in all the different dimensions of life, right? And so I think even non-Christians, Narnia, who have really looked at their lives and go, I've been living, whatever, it's not working. Like, that's why I joke about working on a university. I'm gonna be right with you, Bryce, but I joke at a university where I work with alongside some incredibly smart people who are the dumbest people I know. There is so much knowledge on that campus and very little wisdom. So when people say, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? This is how I describe it. Knowledge is the ability to know things. You can write a great dissertation with lots of knowledge. Wisdom is the ability to live life well. The good life that Steve talks about. To live, there are certain timeless principles. You live it that way. I'll never forget, former owner of Pizzanos Pizza. It's a little quick story. With Pizzanos Pizza, every year when I was the director of crew, he would give us 3,000 free pizza coupons to use with our spiritual interest questionnaires on campus. And his name was Jerry. He's since passed. I think his daughter runs the business. And Jerry and I built a great relationship. And he was not a Christ follower, and he knew I was the director of crew, right? And so we'd always have these conversations, and I would have lots of spiritual conversations with Jerry. And finally I just said, Jerry, you're just so perplexing to me. I said, you are so generous, not just with crew, but with everyone. He was so generous. He was always giving away free stuff. He had great product. We had Pizzanos Pizza. I'm assuming it's still good. But I mean, he was always doing these things. I was like, why do you do this? He says, the principle works. He said, I bought into this principle a long time ago. The more I give away, and the kinder, more generous I am, the richer I get. And it's like, isn't that true? I mean, it's like, he was not doing it for good reasons beyond, he's like, I'm going to get wealthier. The community loves me, you love me, we all, everyone loves pizza, obviously you got to create a good product. But there's just something about it. You're just borrowing from great biblical principles. Bryce.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I definitely think we should say said.
Please.
In terms of like, without, since spirituality or relationship with Christ, like how can you be a life giver? Me personally, I was raised in a very spiritual Christian household, and definitely as it was split. So I went to my mother's house, and my father, stepmother's house was more of a like Christian household. Our mother's house, and it was a lot more leniency. So as I kind of left, from like my parents' house and kind of come into my own, I can definitely acknowledge that, my relationship with Christ, or my spiritual path has strayed away, has come back at times, but I recognize the foundation that I have in Christianity, and I'm appreciative of it, and I still live the life through Christianity because me seeing it in my mother, and just, so like me being a life giver or me being generous to people, I don't know, like, if any instance then, I don't know if it's ever been like me doing things, empathy, if I was in that position, I would want somebody to tell me, or I don't know, something just eats me up, just knowing like if I have the ability to help someone, or, why not, like, if you can spare, then why not? And I would agree with what you said, like, I definitely do feel richer, or like, knowing that, like, volumes, and like, I help them, just because I can. I'm still kind of like pondering that myself, like, that's definitely something I'm looking into lately. Like, I'm still like, what am I, like, why am I doing this? Like, why? There's been times where like me helping other people has jeopardized me, I'm sure, a lot more, whether it's financially, time-wise, like, where I could have, like, probably, maybe I would be better off not helping this person, maybe I would have, but like, I don't know, I just don't think it would speed me up if I didn't. I don't know, I can't really speak, I don't know what it is, it's just like, why not? If I have an opportunity to, like, it would heat me up later if I did.
Yeah.
That's what kind of I think about.
Appreciate that. Let's keep talking, yeah, go.
Also because you know how we get like morality, like our moral compass, like because we were created in the image of God, we get our moral compass from Him. We get our just like really our characteristics, like that people consider good, right, from Him. So I think that's why, because since we were all created in His image,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, were you finished?
Yeah, go ahead. I want to be quick.
Piggybacking off of what Crystal said, I agree. I mean, I think, because me personally, I've met, like, I've been in spaces, like, I mean, I have my life close to, like, especially, like, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, Anthony, and one of the reasons, like, it's real, but one of the reasons that was like, I personally feel like I received life from people who weren't Christians. So, it put me in like spaces where, that now, quite part being part of, but, I think it's true. I think it's like just the nature of man, like we want to be the thing that has given us the morality, but the morality to do good, and it's also like this nature of how things work, like to give, to receive, give it away, and like those different type of things. And I think it's like, people experiencing that not close to Christ is being able to do that because they're made in the image.
Yes. So, and I meet people who are non-Christians or even atheists who were raised in poverty, for instance. You're using an example.
Yes.
They were
the best people.
Yeah, meaning they're just very genuinely grateful people because they're very much in touch with where they were and where they are now. That just creates enough motivation. But again, that doesn't necessarily change the context of this conversation because wherever you are in the room, the issue is not how can that person do that without this or with this, but for you personally, what does it look like for you to move and to evolve and to grow, to be more of a life giver? That's why you're here. That's a conversation, right? To be a life giver. And I just want to just keep hitting those same points. It's about your identity. If your identity is shaped by the perceptions of other people, it's going to be hard to be that on a regular basis in significant ways. If you're not taking care of yourself and drawing boundaries, you're going to burn out. you're gonna flame out, right? So you need to make sure, and then what happens typically is this is what we do. When that happens, with burnout and flame out, we tend to blame the people that we minister to. You know, the ministry took me down, or this organization, they demanded too much. Those are all your choices. Those are all your choices. Now, not always. There's examples where you've been offended or you've been imposed upon, and there's obviously trauma, and there's various things that, you know, probably are in each of your lives. But for the most part, you know, you can draw boundaries. Though it's harder, you can draw those boundaries and say, I'm turning off my phone tonight. Actually, it was just yesterday with someone from Youth for Christ, who was on Youth for Christ for years. And their director at Youth for Christ would say, well, you can't turn your phone off at night. What if somebody needs you?
How dare you draw boundaries?
That's a serious boundary, Darby.
I just had an interesting thought about
Yeah.
boundaries. It's because sometimes it's hard to draw boundaries or to blame your, or to say it's not the organization for the burnout, because then you kind of have to admit you aren't enough to serve everyone. And that can be a very hard idea to come.
And I think that's one of the things I didn't get a chance to talk about, but I want to lean into that a little bit too. So you said great, so that, but because it's easier to blame than to own, right? I mean, we do. I've been working at Bowling Green State University for 28 years. I've actually taught classes to freshmen. I've actually done some teaching. I've TA'd some classes. I've done certain things. I've been around a lot of people who have failed classes, failed tests, failed projects, failed school. Okay? And here's what happens. In all, and this is true, I'm not exaggerating. In 28 years, I have never had a student come into my office to talk about the fact that they failed a test, failed a project, failed a this, and owned it. Ever. The syllabus was unclear, the professor sucked, the class was boring, that smart kid in the front row got 99%, which blew the curve. You know, whatever, there's a variety of it, but I have never had someone come and say, I failed this class. I stopped going to class, I wasn't disciplined, I didn't enjoy it, so I didn't apply myself. And I've talked to thousands of people. No one has ever owned it. It's always something else or someone else's fault. Something outside of me that has caused this. And again, what that does, it keeps them stuck there versus owning it. I quit, or I decided I didn't want to do it, or in fact, I was just in the locker room today. I have all these real life stories literally from the day. I was in the locker room today with a guy named Darren. And I was just kind of probing a little bit, having a conversation with him. And he says, I just hate my major. Changed it 3 times. Okay? And I said, that's great. So you're trying to discover what you're going to do. You don't know yet. You're 21. It's okay. But I said, here's my encouragement to you, though. Finish. I said, finish. He said, but I hate my classes. I hate this. I said, everything you want is on the other side of hard. So even if you hate everything, I just like the fact that you're doing hard things. And he was like, this is, we just started talking, because that's, even what we're talking about right now, this is hard. Because if you flow with the rest of the culture, it is to get, to find, to experience, like for yourself, but to go the other direction, again, to swim upstream, it is completely different. But it's so it's so exhilarating. It goes back to what Steve Risky had said. Steve may not remember this, but it stuck with me, and I share it everywhere I go. People ask me, I get to do a lot of really cool things, but at the very center of everything I do, I talk about people. And this is where the spiritual, this is where the Christness, this is where the theology, this is where everything strikes me. It really enables me to think this way and really stay in this course, is this idea that every human interaction I have is going to last for billions and billions, times 100 more billions, times 1,000 more billions. Every interaction with human beings. And so Steve described it as like, imagine having this conversation with like a person that's, how do you say is this tall, that lasts this long? It's like, hey, this lasts 50 years. If you draw a little graph. This house lasts 20 years, or this car lasts 10 years, or this human being, trillions. So every conversation, human interaction, life-giving opportunity, I would say, it's the only thing that matters. Or not to be dramatic, but it's the only thing that has true lasting, exponential lasting value. So everything you own today is really, you're a steward of, you're borrowing. The house you live in, someone else will live in someday, the clothes you're wearing. You may go to that really cool thrift thing that Narnie was talking about, or you may get it.
$1, maybe closer to 25 cents.
But the reality is, it's all gone. Except for this, human interaction, the ability to give life to it. So I want to build a life around that. Friendship, relationship, people, humans, God. At the end of the day, he doesn't need a worker. So even when I talk about campus ministry here, it was very freeing when I came to the point. I was like, okay, God doesn't need me. He wants me. He wants me to be along for the ride. I get to do ministry with him. How fun is that? If I don't bring someone to a decision, have a great story to tell, no one's flustered, God's not flustered. Why am I flustered? Just be fully. So I've said a couple of things that you got hold up. It's like hooks. This is the point I was getting to this, and I'm just now getting to it. I want you to be a life giver without being a savior. I want you to be a life giver without being a savior. If you start caring more about someone's healing than they care about their own healing, we got a problem. If you start caring more about someone's salvation than they care about their salvation, we got a problem. You need to be fully. So that's the first thing. You get to be a life giver, but you don't. Another way I say it is people change, but people don't change people. People do occasionally change, but not because I changed them. A lot of times when people meet with me, they're not meeting with me for them, they're meeting with them for someone else. And it's the same line over. How do I get this person to understand that? How do I get this person to, and I always say, it's a short conversation. You can't. No, but you don't understand this person. I understand. I totally understand what you're saying. No, but you meant that you can't change people. So life givers aren't in there trying to change people. You literally are being present with people and letting the magic happen. Life givers are magnets. They're magnets. Okay. Now then, magnets need to draw boundaries, right? So even now, one of the things I learned in campus ministry, not early enough, but later on, is that everybody wants to hang out with Michael Brown. Me, but I was in charge, and so you want to meet with the campus minister, so people would call me and say. And so I learned over time. I was like, oh, what do you want to meet about? Well, I just want to hang out. I'm not hanging out. So what's the topic? What's the agenda? I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. And then it causes them to actually think of an agenda. So they give me an agenda. I got roommate issues. Okay, great. So I would like you to read Ephesians chapter 4. And I want you to write down all the things that you find in Ephesians 4 about being a great friend or a great roommate. And once you do that, give me a call. We'll get together. Immediately, I just eliminated 75% of my appointments. Why? Because people aren't interested in taking ownership and growing and changing. They want to hang out. Okay, so see.
Or they wanted your advice on how to change the room, right?
Oh, how to change the room.
Yeah, I could be happy when this external person changes.
The circumstance versus the truth.
Yeah, as opposed to I can learn how to be happy in these circumstances.
Steve and I have done some great podcasts together. Stop Chasing Happiness.
That was fun.
Fear Repels Love. Boy.
Control isn't caring.
Controlling isn't caring.
That was fun.
Follow my podcast. You hear Steve Brisky. He's on there more than me. But no, it's again, I chose 3-word phrases that actually will be transformational, right? So I want to say that. I also want to say something. What was the other thing I was going to say? Empty cups don't pour. Be more interested in people being interesting to people. People change, but people don't change people. Be a life giver without being a savior. This is what I want to say. The best gift that you can give to any human being, the best gift that you can give to any human being is to be fully present in their presence. I mean, that's life-giving right there. fully present in their presence.
So what is that look like?
Yeah, so again, there's lots of those in there. I can give you, there's tips and all kinds of things what it looks like. It's being right here and now. So the way I'll say it, and I often say it, is that most human beings spend 95% of their lives somewhere other than here. And somewhere other than now. We either spend time in the past wondering, or we spend time in the future worrying. So so even now, we spend, how much time? 10 till 8, we spend an hour and 15 minutes together. Probably of that 75 minutes, you've probably been with me here for maybe 15 minutes. You spent most of your time somewhere else. Yes, I'm calling you out. But not in a judgmental way. But the reality is that it's just hard to be present. Because you're going to be, we don't know how to be right here. So one of my 3-word podcasts that I did was Be Fully Present. It's episode 2, actually. My 2 favorite episodes are 1 and 2. The 3 most important words, I said I'm going to put the most important words I want right at the beginning. Episode 1, delay immediate gratification. And episode 2, be fully present. Because to be fully present, wondering, should I have, could I have, what did that mean? And I knew I said that wrong. It's going to be hard to be interested in people if you're always second guessing and wondering. That's actually one of my 3 words. Don't overthink it. Because we're always overthinking it. We're spending all this time in our head, right? So don't wonder, but also don't worry. 95% of the things we're worrying about aren't even going to happen. And even if they do happen, why do you want to experience them twice? Now and then? And that's all that worrying is, by the way, is borrowing sorrow from tomorrow and dragging it into the day. Just be here. Now, what I'm not saying is don't plan. Because obviously there's planning. But I'm planning here for that. But you plan and then you're here. So I've really trained myself, really trained myself to be fully present where I am. It is hard. Me and my wife says I have ADHD. She claims that I've used it in my favor for years, but it's hard for me to, because I have so many things. I'm a dreamer. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I'm adventurous. I'm doing this, and I'm also building a lot of different cool things. But I keep reminding myself. I really keep reminding myself that all I have is now. So some of you know I'm writing a book, The Marble Mindset. No, I actually have enough marbles in my house.
Is that a B or a B?
Marble.
Okay.
I have enough marbles in my house right now in my bedroom to last me for every day until I'm 100.
Wow.
So every day, I did it again this morning. I walked over. So this ties into being fully present. This is how it helps. So every day I reach into the fishbowl and I pull out a marble. And I take this marble and I hold it in my hand for 60 seconds. I just look at it. And I'm reminded every day that all of those, it's getting less and less. And every day is a gift. And I'm not promised tomorrow. I only have today. And maybe only part of today. There's no guarantees. So I'm going to be fully present in these 24 hours. Because it's all I have. So am I going to make deposits or withdrawals in my choices? Am I going to make investments in people's lives or in things that don't matter? And that keeps me really on the trajectory of being a life giver. It allows me to be fully present. And I take these at the end of the day and I put them in a big rubber band in my closet. And then my family's been instructed at the end of my life, whenever that is, that all the marbles come to the celebration of life service.
It's gonna be a marble show then.
No, but everyone's gonna get a marble. My kids are gonna get jars of marbles. My grandkids will get jars of marbles. To be reminded to live in the moment. So I've actually used this in a very tangible way to remind me to be fully present here and now. Because life is short, life is sacred, life's sacred. So I have 13 chapters in the book I'm writing right now. It's called The Marble Mindset. Being fully present in the moment. Very practical, like what does that matter? So very practical. My son Jameson, some of you know him. He's exhausted. I love him to death. He's exhausting. He's still 14 and he still doesn't want to go to bed. So he wants to stall out as long as he can. And I thought that would end by like 12. It hasn't. So I'll never forget the day. It's probably been almost 9 months, 10 months. It's been a while. It's not been quite a year though. Where his new thing is he wants to tell jokes all the time. I tell you another joke, I tell you another joke, I tell you another joke. I was so tired. I had a long day. I was up at 5 a.m. And I'm in there, tucking me into bed. I'm praying into my tumble up. I was like, no more joke. Like, finally said, son. I said, son, Dad loves you. I'm tired. We're done with the jokes. Turn off the light and shut the door. I was walking down. If I tell this story for a second?
No.
Okay. So I shut the door and I was walking down the stairs, like with my hand in my pocket. And I felt it. Walked back upstairs, walked into the room, tried to sat down on the edge of his bed, and I said, tell me as many jokes as you want. I was like, I'm missing out on the very thing that is most important. Because I was going to go downstairs, watch a little TV, hang out with Teresa, which was getting significant too, but not as significant as that. Because the day's going to come where I'm not going to be listening to jokes. So part of it is training my mind, Tony, and just being fully. So whenever I'm countering people, so this is how this goes back to life giving. Every human being I interact with, I'm like, this is a moment. My favorite thing to do is when people are wearing name tags, I would call them by their name. This is a simple little strategy. If you're wearing a name tag, I'm going to call you by your name. I can't tell you how many times that's happened at an airport, at the Delta Sky Club, or at a restaurant, where people are like, oh, have we met? Well, no, your name tag says, Darlene.
You gotta look at the name tag so they know that you put the name tag.
But what's interesting about that, this person's been wearing a name tag for how long? No one's ever called them by their name. That's a simple little life-giving thing to do. Thank you, darling. Okay. So it's just human faces, behind every face name is a story. It's just being present. And then again, one of my favorite things to do is I want to initiate with every stranger I meet. Anybody who walks by, I'm going to say hi. Who knows where that hi will go? And this is why I talk about this is life giving, right? This is the whole life giving philosophy. It's like every single one of your best friends right now is once a stranger. Think about that. Every one of your best friends was once a stranger. So it's just that whole mindset. So in 24 hours, I got lots to do. I had so many things going on. I was writing. I told Teresa I got to the soccer game before I came here, Jameson soccer game, which by the way, I missed to be here with you, and he just scored. I just saw the text. Which is really, really exciting. But I was like, I told Teresa, she goes, how's your day? I crushed it. I got so much stuff done. But then I was excited because I was like, now I get to go be with you guys. It's been a great day. But most of my day has been around people. And obviously, I build a life that. Because what's more important? That was a very long answer to your very short question. How to be fully present. It's just training yourself to do it. When you realize you're not, you just bring yourself back to that point. You just simply say, I am not present. So I'm going to come and be present right now. Now, if you only last 5 minutes and you find yourself wondering where again, and then you train yourself to come back. People tell me this all the time. I'll give them little tips for different things to do, and they say, it's not working. I say, it's not working. I tried it, it's not working. How long have you tried it? 3 days. So the life you built for 30 years, you're going to rewind in 3 days. It's going to take a lot of work. So life-giving, everything we just talked about, it's going to take some work. And everyone around you, again, not everyone, I speak in very extremes. But most people around you are life takers. And so you are literally going to be swimming upstream. If you talk like this, you carry a marble in your pocket, you talk about, people think you're crazy. Because there's all this, you've been lied to. Me first, take yours. All the stuff that the culture tells you, which is, I think, is fascinating. Because most of the things we hear from culture are lies. And we know they don't work. Because they never have worked. And we keep saying, well, maybe they'll work if we do more of it. Talk back to relationships and just life-giving. Let me just make this quick little comment. I've been studying humans for long enough, and I just, a couple of years ago, I had this epiphany that most human beings on the planet, particularly in America, spend the first 60 years of their life marginalizing their most important relationships and sidelining their health to make money and build their career. And then they spend the final 20 years of their life, if they have that 20 years, spending all their money to get back their relationships and their health. That's craziness. Just think of it. So I would say to you, you're like way younger than me. It's like, wow, if you can make everything about human connection, life-giving, giving your life away, with boundaries, of course, not as a savior, all the stuff we're talking about. Man. You lay your head down on the pillow each night and think, well done, good and faithful servant. It's a good day. You're gonna feel more alive. What else? You haven't even turned off that first page. Well, you got some homework to do. Lots in there. Are you now to go through the whole thing?
No.
If there's anything in there, you can flip through. If there's something we may talk more about, I'm here till. You guys can get up and leave. So you can leave. I'm here till 8:20. So I got nowhere to be. I have a place to be at 8:30. And I'll be with you till the very last minute. If the group keeps getting dwindling down, you can leave. And I got a problem. I'm not offended, but I'll sit here with you till 8:20. If there's things that you want me to talk more about or ideas, I want to hit big principles. I don't want to just start walking through and teaching curriculum. It's all there. You can read it. You all read it. You can read it. So then if you have questions, well, next time we get together, let's come back and say, you make this, what's this mean? Or let's talk about this. Or I was thinking, or maybe even between now and session 2, practice this. Practice initiating every stranger you meet and see, oh, darn it, no.
Social anxiety.
See, okay, I get it. So again, you need it within your context, within your world. You need to be able to think
So
about.
every person you see.
Well,
Except we never know.
but it's interesting. So even that. So when I say see like hey. So this is one of my favorite. I'm a people watcher, right? My favorite part is when you're walking across campus, or I'm coming from the student rec center to my parking lot because I park in the far away. And you get the other guys that are coming toward you. This is particularly true of men, not to gender stereotype, but they don't want to make eye contact with me. And so I'm about 20 feet away when they're going to pretend to pull the phone and be looking at something, so I have to, you know what I do? Good morning. And you know what? People light up. So I actually was training. So it's interesting. I spent a lot of time at the rec center, so I made a lot of friends at the rec center. And there was this one guy named Austin I saw at the rec center. And I'm watching him, like I'm watching all the other people who are trying to like look cool and look in the mirror and hopefully everyone notices. He was going around talking to people, introducing. And I finally just said to him, I said, who are you? I'm Michael Brown, I'm thinking we met, started having a conversation with him. And I said, I've been watching you. And this is what I see. And I actually had him come speak at the Vanguard meeting, which was a mentoring community, on initiating with strangers. This was Austin. He told me this true story. This was after I had him speak at Vanguard. Because I said, keep doing it. Keep doing it. And he said, he actually went up to this guy who was just crushing it. He said, he looks great. He looks like he's watching over the several months. He's getting leaner. He's getting stronger. And he said, Austin went up to another guy and for fear of being looked at as weird and said, hey, dude, you're crushing it. You look great. You're doing fantastic. And he just, this mammoth of a human being started crying. Right in the middle of the student rec center. And he said, you have no idea how much that means to me. He said, I look at every he should tell him the whole life story. I look at the mirror every day and I just have all this self-loathing going on, and I just because it's initiating with the randomly with a stranger and saying, you look great. And again, that could be misperceived in a lot of different ways, right? He didn't care. He was more interested in people than being interested. It was all paid off. And even that person you look has this shell, like not interested, this is one of the things I'm convinced of, the longer I've been living. Every human being is craving genuine, real connection. And they're probably not getting it. So if I can step in and provide a little of that, like, how is that gonna go back? So yeah, so it's more like a hello. Now, that hello may go to, how you doing today? I'm tired, so when you choose to be tired. Right? I do have a little strategy
I
there.
don't think I'm gonna ask.
You're not gonna do that. It's funny though.
No,
'Cause-
I do talk to.
Well, and I have this funny little strategy I've used, because I love my coffee, and I don't like lines, and I got too much to do. So I will, like COVID probably should shut down my strategy, but I will go to the front of the Starbucks line in the student union, because I have an office there. So I go to the front of the Starbucks line and I say, I don't think we, man, I might go find a worker in the student union. Can I buy you whatever you were to get today? I'd love to treat you to whatever you're going to get today. And it's technically not considered cutting if I get a coffee myself, right? I just got the egg bites and whatever else they wanted. They're so touched, they're never going to forget it. So I made a human connection there, right? That did backfire once. It freaked out this one girl. She was freaked out. I mean, she
Get away from me.
get away from me, and occasionally, but my identity's intact. It's one of the things, even when I speak or I'm like interacting with people, and I'll ask a question and it's quiet. I don't mind a little quiet, but then there's always someone in the room that's very concerned about me. You just ask a question and no one's answering, so I got to jump in and answer. And if it gets awkward, sounds like, just so you know, all of you who are feeling awkward, I'm not. It's okay. I'm okay. I said, my self-image is intact. I don't mind. I don't mind. It's okay. Take a minute to think. So I love initiating with strangers. The last person you want to sit on a plane is next to me, Chris.
I think it's me.
But also there's social norms, but there's also social norms, right? So you want to maintain some social norms, but to say good morning to someone, hello to someone, thank you, like most now, that's what I'm hearing. I've been in class for a while, but I hear that literally there are people who have been in class with each other for 15 weeks, and everyone in the hallway is on their phone. No one is interacting. No one is interacting. Why not interact? Because people don't do it. It's not what people do. Well, do something different.
I think it's a fear, like, if you do that, it's like, it's so many questions afterwards. I don't know. It feels like if you do, you have no idea what's going on.
Don't wait over there, Bryce.
How did it fall out? I don't know.
What was the fear? What was the fear? You said what was the fear?
I was saying, it's a fear that you never know what this person is going to, especially if you, okay, now, this is also another, especially if you fear rejection, then you will never introduce yourself to you'll fear that if you do it, they'll ignore you, or like they'll, it'll be a.
So let's go there real quick. Fear of rejection. Let's
You
go.
reject them for they can reject you.
Yeah. But let's go there. Let's go there. So fear of rejection. So 3 words. Face your fears. Okay. So here, I literally just had this conversation today with the captain of the cross country team. Just today. So these are all real life stories, literally from the day. I hired him, he works in my office, but he called me, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this story, it's not that personal, but he called me a week ago freaking out because he was going to actually have an internship with Owens Corning. He was supposed to give this big speech. He called me, he said, I need some help, I'm freaking out. And I said, why? Why are you freaking out? I said, and I just told him what was true of him and what I've seen in him. And just like, what are you believing right now? He's like, if this doesn't go well, I'm not going to get, they're only going to offer an intern a job for one of the many interns. And I said, say so. I said, you have been developing and growing before my eyes for the last 3 years. I said, what is going to happen is going to happen. Don't wonder. Don't worry. I want you to step into that. And I just kind of encouraged him. Anyway, long story short, he did well. He was offered that one position. So, and I found that out today. So he said to me, I said, so how are things going? He says, I got the job. I said, oh, do you see my surprise face? And then he said, why do I get so afraid? And I said, well, we've talked about this. 3 steps to facing your fears. Identify it, investigate it, incriminate it. The way I approach fear is the same way I approach frustration. Identify it, investigate it, incriminate it.
So,
Okay, so let me talk about that real quick. So whenever you're facing it, when you're dealing with a fear, so you're saying, I have a fear of rejection. Well, first of all, in fact, you just said that. You're not 80% of the way there. You've identified, I am afraid of rejection. So now I'm gonna ask you to investigate it. Why? Dig in there a little bit. Why? And begin to explore that a little bit, investigate it. Because then you're actually gonna be able to seal the leak versus put more water in. Okay, because the fear of rejection is a leak, right? And then I'm gonna incriminate. What is true? I'm gonna replace a falsehood with truth. So whenever you remove something, you need to replace it with something else. Don't think about that, don't think about that, don't think about that, don't think about that. No, I need to replace it with what I am gonna think about. So part of me, that's why I'm going there, because I'm sure Tony's not the only one who's like, I'm afraid of rejection. So that's okay, you've identified it. So is that your personality? Is that just, do you just live there forever? Is that just something you're like, I have a relative, and I won't mention this individual's name, they're not in my house, but a more distant relative who always just explained to me that they're a worrier. I'm just a worrier. No, you're a human being who chooses to worry. Worrying is not your identity. Worrying is your choice. Now, of course, there's obviously social anxiety, there's issues, there's trauma, there's background, there's words that have been shared with you when you were in 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade that are still sticking in your brain. Those are all real things. All real things. I'm not downplaying them, but are you gonna face them? Or are you gonna be like, I'm just afraid of rejection, so I can't do that? Go ahead, Steve.
You left the crowd frustrated here, and I think a lot.
Oh, I left the crowd frustrated?
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
You didn't say what to incriminate here. In other words, Cesar, right? The odds were actually relatively low that Cesar would get it. And not because he's not gifted, but there were other gifted people there, right? So if he was attempting to incriminate, it's impossible for you not to get this job. I don't have to worry about it. I'm gonna be fine. I think he'll know it's BS and he won't be able to tell the truth, right?
So let me back up there.
So you have to say what to incriminate.
Yeah, so what I encouraged him to incriminate that is that the speech was gonna fail and he was gonna be a flop. We weren't incriminating whether he was gonna get the job or not. The issue was he felt like the speech, and he's been developing his speaking skill, he was gonna do great. And so that, it was not gonna go poorly. He was talking himself the possibility it was gonna go poorly. So that's what we were actually incriminating. Not the fact that, because yeah, it's true. Because I even said, you might not get the job. Like when we had the conversation, I was actually in New Orleans when he FaceTimed me in New Orleans, it was like, we need to talk. I was like, you might not get the job. So are you gonna worry about that? Because that's gonna help your speech, right? So we just begin to really unpack it, walk through it. Because here's what typically is happening is that these ideas get in our head, which become a threat to life-giving, that they just get stuck there. And they go unexamined and unchecked and unquestioned.
Are they threats to life-giving or are they threats to what are so?
Sure, they're threats to all of it. I mean, we're in the context of a life-giving conversation, but if you're continually believing like I'm not enough or people won't like me or how they're gonna respond, then we tend to get stuck there.
It means you can't give as well, but it also means you're gonna be running dry and you're gonna be like a king in a hose.
Yes, exactly. So perfect example. I like the king and the hose idea. My chiropractor says this all the time. He says, Michael, I don't provide any healing. I can heal nothing. The body heals. It has the ability. God's created. He's Christian. God's created to heal. My job is simply to unkink the hose. To use that exact illustration. All I do is I'm just unkinking the hose so that things that flow need to flow where they need to flow. And you're not dealing with pinches and things like that. So I like this. So in many ways, that's a pinch that slows down the flow of life. Here's a pinch that flows down, a kink that flows down the flow of life to your soul as well as to others. So, but the point is, I was just giving you a little, I'm going to talk about Alonzo here in a minute, but I want to give you that little thing just to think, to go through that process in your mind. If there's something you're stuck on, identify it, say it out loud, talk. If you can bring it into the community, it's even better. Say it out loud to someone else. You're identifying it, you're investigating it. So in the same way, if you're driving on the street, you're like, oh, identify, there's city space. Okay, you identified it. Now come inside and walk around and look around, investigate it. What's in here? What's in here? What's that room? Oh, it's a bathroom. What's that room? And you're investigating. Do the same thing with your life. Investigate. And then incriminate it if you need to. Right? It'd be like, okay, what is actually not true about this? And begin to replace not true with true. Alonzo, you thought, a question?
So, as you kind of talked about that, I immediately thought of learned helplessness, which is a situation where you try something over and over and you see that there's no result. They did an experiment with rats, like regardless of wherever they moved, they got shot. At a certain point, you're like, no matter what I do, I'm getting shot, so they just give up completely. And the only way you can reverse that is that you have to have outside sources, like actively and like continuously. It's similar to like they do this training with, or they do this with farm animal, like cattle and stuff. Like they'll tie them to like a post. And like, after a certain point, you don't even have to have the post like tied to anything. You just have to have it. And so I think about like situations in life. So it might be like, let's say like there's a person that I know I went to undergrad with, and they went through and they had applied to like 100 jobs just repeatedly, and they got to like, I didn't know how to help this person. They got to a certain point, they were like, well, I guess I'm just not getting a job in the field that I was kind of interested in, that they went to school for. And like, what can you like really do for those types of situations? Because like everyone has a breaking point at like some point. So like, how can you kind of help those types of?
Well, you're talking about two different, so basically identity issues, but you're also talking about jobs, you're talking about external things versus internal things. So I would approach those very differently. I like this idea, you need something from the outside to speak in, which is why community, there's a lot of content in here in this about the power of community. And this is how I would most say it. So learn helplessness, like it's not working, I'm not good at this. Like even, I think my conversation with Cesar, it was an outside source speaking into his falsehood. And I brought truth because I see him. I see him more accurately than he sees himself. Any man or woman who looks at themselves in the mirror, alone without any community, is always out of touch with reality. We do not see ourselves clearly outside of community. So in many ways, if you're feeling a certain way, you invite people into that. They're going to speak into that. I can't tell you how often I sit with people who are the most extraordinary people I've met. Have all this amazing potential and giftedness. And they don't see themselves that way at all. Because it took them saying, this is how I see myself, and me going, or someone else around them going, that's not true. That's not true. It actually, so that's an outside source. So your identity. So I'm talking more, that's more identity. Like fear, I'm not enough, now obviously jobs. There's no guarantee that they'll ever get a job in that field. So I don't know how to help that person beyond the fact that, and again, I share, this is a kind of a principle that I'm hear what Steve wants to speak into this, but this principle of there's only two things in life that I have 100% control over. Because we like control, right? There's only two things in life I have 100% control over. But of these two things, I have 100% control 100% of the time. So it's really powerful. Who I'm becoming. That's the first thing. You can't control your financial situation fully, your job status fully, your retirement package fully. Like there's things you can do, but who I'm becoming, who I am at the end of my life, I get to choose who I become. I get to decide generous, integrity, honest, compassion. I have complete control over that. The second thing I have control over 100% of the time, again, without extreme circumstances, is my very next choice. So I actually encourage people not to think about changing. I tell them stop getting so preoccupied with changing and start thinking about choosing. Changing is the outcome. Changing the outcome. Choosing, you start stacking those choices, and then it's like, oh, I am what I continually do. Right? Things like that. Like I hear that. Like I've tried for 100 jobs, and I feel hopefully been investing in becoming, and they might have to make a shift of trajectory in regards to, hey, we're in COVID, or hey, the job field, or there's things that we can't, I'm not sure I can actually help them in that regard. If the help means, how do I get them a job exactly what they want versus how do I make sure their identity is intact and who they're becoming? Because that's the only thing that matters most anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned the aspect of like having the community, what about the people that don't have that community?
Oftentimes people who don't have that community have chosen not to have community.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so oftentimes we talk about the fact that we don't have any close friends, but meanwhile we're wearing masks and not sharing our true selves with anyone. And then we're surprised that we don't have friends. Or we don't share with, or obviously hurting, so there's not community there. We also spend, back to life giving, life taking, we spend so much energy trying to find best friends versus becoming the kind of best friend that people want to be around. Goes back to dating on campus. I can't tell you how many times, guys have sat with me, particularly men, because, man, and they're like, I need help. I'm like, what's the help? They're like, I didn't find that special someone. I'm about to graduate from college. I thought this was where I was going to find a wife, right? I was like, have you been in any relationships? And they spend so much time looking for the right person and not becoming the person that somebody wants to be around. And then they have this incredible list of all the things that they want to do. Like they tell me their list, and like, you're going to get this person. Like you attract who you are, and you're nothing like this list. And again, it's always this like shock that they're the only one common denominator in all of those relations. But I think in many ways, if you are a life giver, you are going to be in community. But it's because you've been more interested than being interested, right? But it's also going to require what Tony's modeled to us even here, like some transparency, some vulnerability, some honesty, to being real, to asking for help, and actually have conversation and answers in there that will help you kind of build deeper community and support. Steve.
I just wanted to point out, like, that you circle around here at the end, like, you were starting to act like, you go to those job interviews, it's gonna be great, stop worrying about it. Except, most of what happens in anything like that is, there's a group of people who have the qualification, and then they're gonna see, to use our terminology for tonight, they're gonna see who's life-giving as well. I mean, honestly, right? Like, there's certain people, but I got 10 applicants, right? In an interview, I mean, they have the qualifications. But the one that sticks out is the person who when I was with them, I felt like this felt great in that feeling level thing. So let's think about like the amount of feels that come into play, right? A, will they reject me? B, am I enough? Right? Like I got all this like feelings of like stuff like loathing that are like wanting to play out, and then I got if I don't get this job, I've convinced myself I'll never be happy or alive. And if I allow all these fears to reign, fear starts growing, then I can't be a life giver. So the ironic person who's going to get the job is probably the one who's worrying about it least, which gave them room to, instead of being interesting, they were interested. They had done their homework. They're asking jobs about the company and they're excited about the job. They're not casting fear. They're not casting that tightness. So all of these principles, like a job interview and a date, are probably the two places where all of these skills line up the most. And it can feel so daunting because it's such a moment where all of us are playing.
And I didn't even think about that, but it's true. I mean, this is for young people who are wanting to get great careers and become, like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is actually the pathway. Life giving is the pathway to those things too. Not just being in ministry and being like it literally, who doesn't want to hire someone like that? In fact, I shared today in my keynote with this cultivating openness with this corporation. I said, honestly, the number one reason why people are getting fired in organizations today is because they don't know how to get along with other people. And they can't take constructive criticism, and they are arrogant and they're defensive and they're blaming and making excuses for everything instead of owning. Like, it's all about, so your job opportunities, your retention in a job, your promotion. So I even said the ability to be an open person who can engage with difference is one of the most marketable skills in the world today, because no one can do it. Again, dramatic statement. But like, who are you meeting that's really, like, when someone comes at you with a different perspective that really disrupt your worldview, where you can lean in and say, tell me more about that. Which again, that's why Christian ministry is tricky. Because Christian ministry is why I bet my whole life on the fact that Jesus is king. And so the fact that you're saying Jesus isn't king, I get all flustered and start freaking out. Because it's like, instead of just letting it be there. Just let it be there. Okay, so they don't think Jesus is real. They don't think God exists. Why is that freaking you out?
Yeah, shaky foundation.
Yeah, just let it be. So so imagine now spiritual conversations, the ability to be with people, just to be present and be like, I don't need to, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here to be present with you and answer questions and maybe challenge some of your thinking. But in the context of relationship, of the incarnation, right? I'm among you, not above you, outside of you. Which is why I love, kind of stuff we built up with crew. And I know Brookside's like that. We're in places and spaces. And then, and again, be real quick, rich, R-I-C-H, relaxed, inquisitive, confident, and humble. To be chill, to be in the present of people when they say things that are provocative, it's like, just be there. It's okay. You can chill. To be inquisitive, ask really good questions. Tell me more about that. That's fascinating. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that? And great questions often over time solicit great questions. People begin to ask you questions. But we're not very good at question asking. We're very good at proclaiming. You have lots of ability to be a proclaimer versus a listener. Ask questions. Confident. So I want you to walk into there being confident. Your identity is intact, but also humble. So one of my favorite things to do with spiritual seekers is when I'm a Christian, I'm a Christ follower, I have a theology degree, right? I have a theology degree from Moody Bible Institute, and I've been in ministry for years, and there are times when I'm sitting with someone who's much more intelligent than me, and they bring up a really good point. I'll never forget, most vivid example is my son Justin, who's super smart, he's now a doctor, and he has a vibrant relationship with Christ, but there was a period of time where he was always like, Dad, we need to sit down. Look at this contradiction in the Bible. And I'm sitting there with him, and I look at him and be like, you're right, it looks like a contradiction to me too. I mean, I can try to spin it. I need to do some more research, but and he would look at it, and it just gave him the space to ask. But typically, in my early days of ministry, I would panic and give all these reasons why that wasn't, instead of being like, that's a really good point. That looks like a contradiction to me too. Or even to ask a really good question, instead of just kind of I have to answer right away, or I'll look like I'm not solid in my faith and that Jesus isn't real. So instead of that's a great question. I have no idea, but can I think about it, or can I look into it and we can talk more about it next week? And people are always because nobody wants to be around the person who has all the answers to every single question. Right. You're a cojourner. There's 9 billion people on the planet? I don't know, 8 billion people on the planet? I'm Michael Brown in Bowling Green, Ohio. I'm 53 years old. I have one life experience. And I have 100% corner on truth. Why does people, but yet people think that way, right? They think that I now know the answer to, be an inquisitive cojourner with everyone else. People want to hang out with you for all hours of the night.
Speaking of,
I'm gonna double check. I'm moving by 8:30. Okay, I got it covered. So I'm here with you a little longer. Yes.
you said you had an 8:30.
No, I'm good now.
So I was letting know.
That what you're gonna say? Speaking of
Hours
which,
of the night, and she's worried about you.
no, I'm good. I looked at 8:21 and I sent a quick text, and so I was in charge of picking someone up at 8:30, and now it's covered. So again, we can end. I'm here, present with you. We've been sitting here a long time talking. We wrap this up. Steve said I frustrated the room. Is anyone still frustrated with me?
No, you answered it even before I got around to it.
Well, and again, part of my style, just so you know, those of you who know me well, just be aware. I like to inject this equilibrium and uncomfortability in both settings. Because that's when learning takes place. I don't want you to be like, oh yeah, I agree with you, and I think the same way. I want you to be like, wait, that doesn't, that, because I don't mind if you're mad at me. But I want you to leave your thinking. And I want you to be challenged. or we wasted our time. If I'm just coming and telling you the same thing we've always thought, like I want to push you a little bit. So I tend to be a little pushy, so that is my style, so just now you know that. Anything else you're thinking about? Anything you've seen in the book? Like, again, will you do your homework and just read through and just ask questions? I think even in the back of the one, I think I have my cell number there. Yeah, the back, I have a little bio on this one. Cell number, email, 3wordspodcast.com. I mean, everything's there. You can get a hold of me. Say, I was reading on this. What does this mean? Or just pick up the phone and just FaceTime you. You'd be surprised how often I just pick it up. Because I'm in the middle of something, but a human being's calling me, who Steve Risky says is going to last for billions of years and has infinite value. So I'm like, am I going to answer that, or am I going to respond to the email? Every place I've spoken around the country, I always include my personal cell phone. And I challenge every single person to save it. And I said, if you're going to text me, if you're going to email me, why not FaceTime?
I think I've watched you FaceTime people while you were mowing the grass.
It's possible. But people would literally, numbers I've never seen, will FaceTime me and I'll pick up. I've just never gone back.
Be gone.
Huh?
That's fine.
It's
Maybe
FaceTime.
literally, yeah, FaceTime.
Or
You don't have to answer. I don't have to answer. You don't have to. I get it. If I FaceTime, you don't have to answer.
I recognize the area code, like, I don't know, like, I usually have a good hunch, like, who's calling, like, oh, I know this number, and then it's like a complete, like.
Oh, my favorite though is telemarketers.
That's how you
Because I'm gonna
start
ask them
a job.
about their childhood.
I'm calling.
Do you get a
I'm gonna go. I've had some very interesting conversations with people who randomly show up in my world.
Because they get paid for all that time.
Why not?
Yeah.
So what else are you thinking about? I think we've hit our points. I think we've, we've talked about. So this, whether you're a spiritual seeker or whether you're thinking about your career or you're involved in building a campus ministry with Brad and Tony, or if you're involved in whatever you are, this is really helpful. So it's transformed my life. And I didn't even share the initiative. So it all started at the very beginning where I'm like, I was trying to make sense of this. I'm like, wait, I'm meeting these people. So I'll go back to where I should have began. I'll conclude with where I should have began. I kept meeting these people years ago. And I was like, man, when I'm with them, it's almost like time stands still.
Mm.
And I thought, what is going on here? And then I've been with people where it's like, man, this 5 minutes feels like an hour. And I just was like trying to make sense of it. And the language that came to mind is they feel like so life-giving. And that's when I started coming up with the acrostic, loving, inquisitive. Like what makes them that? And that's when I kind of began to kind of put words to it and language to it, just because I'm trying to figure it out. And most of them were deeply spiritual people who had this like full cup, this like river of life flowing out of them. But some of them weren't. Yeah, Darby.
Off topic, but just thought was, I don't know what you mean by leadership quotient.
LQ. It just means, are you, yeah. I actually came up with I'm working on a new thing called openness quotient, the OQ. Yeah, how open are you as a human being?
So what about the leadership quotient? Use it, define it in terms that aren't those two words.
If you use those questions, are you looking at the questions?
Yes.
If you just examine those questions, it gives you a sense. It's a life giver leadership quotient, right? It's like, how life-giving are you? On the scale, on the continuum of life-giving, again, it's not quantitative, it's qualitative. Like, do you tend to shun rated people or drawn more to them? Do you tend to, yeah, it just gives you a sense of, I liked it. I borrowed it, reworded some of the things, added some questions from J. Oswald Sanders and some work that he did. And I just thought, this is fascinating. I'm just trying to give language to get people, because people always know, am I a life giver or a life giver? That's all my question is. Am I a life giver? Whatever. You know what you can do? Ask the people closest to you. When am I most life-giving? And when do you feel like I'm sucking? Now, there's actually books out called The Energy Vampires. I work with an organization who their whole team read this book about who are the energy vampires in the room. It's just the same, it's a different language, but it's like they're sucking the life out of the room, like the oxygen out of the room. Like, and again, don't feel bad like if you've ever done that. And don't even judge people who do. Just call it what it is and say, this is how I'm going to make sure I'm breathing life and energy to a space. It's not about, what about you? Are you more life-giving than me? Or who's more? Just don't even go there. It's not worth it. Just think, for you looking in the mirror, what work do I need to do in my life, in the different dimensions of life, to actually become that kind of person, to believe like that person, to behave like that person. That's all. Lauren, hi.
Hi.
I'm hearing from you for the first time today.
Right, I know.
I love it.
Okay, so my thought is, I feel like sometimes, and maybe that's why you haven't heard from me, don't like it, but I feel like sometimes, like, or a lot of times, I think that the way that I learn people is by watching people or paying attention instead of talking to them off the bat. But I have had moments, I'm not scared of people, I like talking to people. But I've had times in my life where I talk to people more. But I feel I don't know, I like to examine them first. And so I guess my question or what I'm saying is I don't know, how can I avoid the life-taking people? Because I feel that's what I'm trying to do is see if you're not worth that, but see if me talking to you is going to be good for me or if it's going to I don't know, end up bad or something like that.
Well, I think where it becomes bad is where that person's toxic
Okay.
or manipulative or is, because again, it may not be fun. Because part of being a life giver means that you might not be getting a lot from that person. But you're talking about something even beyond that. You're talking about the fact that it's actually bad for you, where it's difficult for you. And I'm trying to play this out. So, because obviously a 5-minute conversation with a life taker or someone who's difficult, it's not going to probably, but then if it becomes an hour, now they're calling you all the time wanting to hang out, you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? One of the things with boundaries too, so I don't know if this is helpful. So I think part of it is if someone's life taking, we haven't talked about this, but I'll talk about it now. I'm going to tell them. So perfect example. Real life example. So I'm really close to all the workers at the Student Rec Center. I'm really close to all the workers. In fact, I had all the guys over to my house for dinner and just a Q&A and life coaching session with them. I developed a lot of close friendships there. Most of the people who work there, I see every single day. Well, they were talking about an individual. They're like, have you met this person? And they described the most life-taking, what they would consider the most life-taking person at the rec center, who, if you make eye contact or you get in a conversation, it's going to be an hour and a half, and you are trapped. And he's a little bit pushy, he's a little bit demanding, and all these various things. And they're like, how do I avoid and how do I this? I said, don't. They're like, what? You understand? I said, they have a pretty good relationship now because they've talked for literally hours with this individual. I said, you need to say, and again, I'm like, let's role play together. Because already you're leaning in because you have your life taking people in your life who, quite honestly, have no idea. You have no idea. So you're going to be the first person who's going to share that with them. So I was I was role playing with them how to do this. I was like, hey, what if it goes to I'm going to make up a name. His name is Joe. It's not his name. Hey, Joe, I really enjoy talking to you, but just a couple quick things. Whenever you come over, I want to know you, but I'm working right now and you cross boundaries. And I was just I'm role playing this, I'm making up even now, where it's I can't talk for more than 5 minutes. Okay. Also, a lot of people, and I share this with you because there are people in the rec center who are avoiding you because you're bouncing around giving everyone advice on how they should be working out and what they're doing wrong all the time. And I'm guessing you're doing that because you really care about people and you want to help people. What it's doing is the opposite effect. So I just want you to know that because I care about you and I really value our friendship. Similarly, I've been asked to speak, I talk about fraternities, I've been speaking over the years in campus ministry to sororities. They invited me in to talk about how do you understand guys? Help me understand men, okay? Obviously in the context of heterosexual relations. Help me understand it. So my biggest advice to the sorority women is, when you break up with a guy, will you promise me, moving forward from this moment on, you'll tell them exactly why? Because no one does. You're life-taking, you're this, you smell weird, you don't wear deodorant, or I'm not attracted to you. But typically what happens is we go, I just need to work on myself. I'm not in the space right now, which isn't true, because if that other guy came, you would date him tomorrow. Yeah, so, but what happens is, but here's the deal. But we spend so much time never being honest with each other. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this person has no idea, they're completely socially unaware. So part of the life giving is actually saying to that person, I care about you, can I offer this suggestion to you? But then it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be a very hard conversation. But then the next time you see them, if you move toward them and not avoid them, continue to love on them, they're gonna realize you're in their corner. So I don't know if that's helpful in the context of what you just asked, but I think so often, I'm guessing you're surrounded with people who are just draining, but have no idea. So they keep doing the same thing, hoping to find friends in life. And meanwhile, they're sabotaging every relationship, and no one is daring to tell why. So a life giver would tell them.
I have a comment. I feel like both are important. Like,
Yeah.
remember how you were saying about
Very,
BDP?
Oh,
very,
EEP, yeah.
trained people, very interesting.
Cause like, so a stranger, right? Like, they could be a BDP, but like, if we're like sharing the gospel, or we're like talking, like, it's okay if they're like that, right? But like in your close inner like circle and things like that, you want like diaconus, right? So I feel like everyone is gonna start off as like a person who you just don't know their like intentions, or you don't know like if they're gonna be like a good, I don't know, a good person to like have around you, like in close proximity, and to like be vulnerable with and things like that. So I feel like just talking to really anybody.
Go ahead, Lauren. I want to hear more from Lauren.
I'm just having like a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think, because I think that eventually I get to that point, like, where like I talk to the person, but like at first I do just like,
You watch
I
them.
don't know, yeah,
I'm not saying that. That's not a bad thing.
okay.
No, I'm talking more about, I think it's, again, that's how I'm wired. It's what I'm encouraging, but I'm not encouraging like deep conversations like, good morning, hello. Even just taking those little steps, I think human connection in the very briefest of ways. And again, you need to factor that into your own kind of like personality, temperament. But what I don't think is healthy for any human being is to be on their phones and avoid every human contact of the day, which most of our culture is doing now. It's just not good.
You'll probably meet some really cool people.
It's because you're trying to do connection without having real connection. And there is connection to be made on the World Wide Web, but it's
It's a different type of connection.
right. Like even friends at the airport. Friends at the airport.
I have met friends at the airport who now I've been in contact with for 20 years.
I've made hour-long friends at the airport.
Hour long?
At the train station.
Yeah,
I
and then you don't
remember-
see them again?
No,
That's fine.
because they're Amish, but
So you can't FaceTime. You know.
my phone can't do FaceTime, doesn't that? But it is like human connection, and it's a different sort of like, you're weirdly doing life for an hour with people and helping them carry like bags so that they can corral kids, but it's like a different kind of loving and serving people who you're not gonna see again, but it's
we were built for person-to-person connection.
Yeah, and I think Lauren, with you, if you, just explore why you do that. If it's an issue, if it's just because you like to study and you're just interested and you're watching people versus if there's fear there. That, because some people actually use, that before they initiate conversations, they want to get as much information as they can to know that there's a pretty good chance that this person's like them or would be compatibility. And they want to avoid anyone who's just like, nah. So again, you have to just kind of discern for yourself, like what's the root of that? Because I think it's cool to be a people watcher and just be studying people and be interested in just kind of watching them. And so I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, because everyone's life-giving. So you're life-giving. I mean, even some of the illustrations I've used are pretty extreme, right? So you have to allow me to be me, but don't feel like, okay, so Michael said I need to cut line at Starbucks. I need to have 3-hour conversations on the plane. I need to, you need to contextualize this conversation in the context of who you are as a person, but also maybe where you are in this journey. Because what you don't know, and even as you experience me today, and some of you are meeting me for the very first time, maybe I think we've maybe all met at some level, you don't have a clue where I've been from. Like this person, and who I am right now, and the way I talk about this and live this out is very different than even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, for sure 40 years ago. I was the kid in school who never said a word. I was a kid in school who was raised in poverty, whose dad walked out on him. I was the biggest kid in my school. I weighed more in 5th grade than I weigh today. There was a lot going on. Okay. And there's a variety, and I can tell you my story sometime where it all kind of turned and began to shift. But I think people sometimes think, so I've had quite a problem. I've had quite a journey. So I'm talking to you as 53, and many of you were in your 20s. So, but I will say this, I grabbed hold of these ideas and I said, I am going to do it. I'm going to continue to push hard to be this person, increasingly so to my 100th birthday. And for me, this is what it looks like. It's going to look different for each of you. But I hope we'd all come to agreement that being a life giver, interested in people, like who shouldn't, in the context of who they are, live this way? With Jesus as the model, with the disciples as the model, with the great leaders of our time, from MLK to Gandhi to Jesus, right? There was a lot of giving of life with not a lot of return. Right? There wasn't a lot of kickback.
Let me go back a second. Sorry.
No,
I was
go ahead.
analyzing thought of what you guys were talking about. You're talking about telling like the strangers life-taking thing.
You're like, oh, no, okay.
But no, it's like, when you're talking about not like engaging with life takers, sometimes, some of the life takers, because it's the continuum, I'm a life giver today, or I'm a life taker the next day, it's the, depending on how it goes. Some of those are the ones in your inner circle that like, for example, without getting into too much detail, my mother's been going through a lot right now. And if we can talk about the circumstance versus choices, but very tough things. And there are times when it just gets in those moods. I'm talking with their lover to death, but it's just like all this negativity and training, and then it just passes aggressive towards other people. And then I feel like, Mom, I love you to death. However, this is what you're doing, and it's not good. It's not good for me, but most importantly, it's not good for yourself. You're just like,
How do those conversations go, Justin?
oh, they go great. It's just like, I tell her like, hey, this
That's
is.
sarcasm?
No, like,
Okay.
no, it sounded like sarcasm. They go well because it's like, I totally, I love you, but like this, we can't.
And because I love you.
Yeah, because I love you, like, you're hurting yourself, you're draining people around you with this, like, let's turn this around, let's turn this some scripture, and so like, sometimes it's those people closest to you that you gotta have those conversations with.
For sure.
I have been someone who's, some people have had to have that conversation with me, and that is one of the things I value the most in friendships, is like, there is a friend who I've had for years who was able to look me in the eyes and say, you said this thing to someone, it hurt them, here's how it hurt them. And I completely didn't realize it, but I had left like a wake of like destruction that I did not recognize that it had happened, and someone had mentioned it to me. And to have people who come to you and say, you're doing this thing, here's how it's affecting people, here's how it's affecting me, here's how you could change. Versus when people just keep quiet and draw away. Like, it is so, like, it's a huge blessing to have people love you enough to tell you that you're messing up.
May hurt at first. I think it's like a true testament.
Oh, I
They
mean,
care.
yeah.
It always hurts.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, I cried, but
Yeah, it always hurts.
I think that's the thing, like, that's the difficult part of life giving. All of it's difficult, but I think, or at least maybe I'm sure I'm wrong, but, yeah, like, I don't know, like, because it feels like you're crossing like a boundary, like, when doing that. When you're sharing with someone who's like taking life away from you, or, I don't know. But, I mean, I think, like, it's one of the most helpful ways to give life, because I feel like, those are some of our, like, biggest blind spots.
And bro, maybe even use that as an opportunity. I'm just brainstorming here just in real time, but to maybe let them choose the timing. Particularly if it's someone in your inner circle that you're close to, say, hey, just so you know, maybe you talk about this. You know, I went to this session on life giving and I was actually challenged and realized, you know what, I probably have some blind spots in my life that maybe I don't see. And so I want to, in our friendship, I want to be able to talk about those, the things you see in my life, the things I see in your life. Would you be open to that? Because I know, I'm just going to play this out, role play. Tony, there's some things actually I feel like I've seen in your life that I think are probably hurting you and are tracking you from the things you want to accomplish that I got to share. Because I didn't want to hurt your feelings and I didn't want to, but I would love to have that conversation at some point when you might be ready to maybe hear a few thoughts, but vice versa, if there's things, I'd love to hear them and begin to actually introduce the conversation without just saying, hey, just so you know, it's like out of the blue, right? I think we can create.
By the way.
Yeah, we can create. And again, I actually have, there's a couple principles I use when I'm going to have a hard conversation in general. And it's timing, tact, tone, and transparency. Those are the 4 T's of a hard conversation, right? Tact is the words I actually choose. I probably don't want to use idiot or, whatever. I'm just saying like words of tact. Tone, we all know tone matters as much as the words itself. And quite honestly, if you're ever in a place where you're going to have a hard conversation, if you're wanting to have a hard conversation with someone as a life giver, if you feel like in your spirit you want to put them in their place, it's not time.
yeah.
If you're thinking to yourself, I actually do love you and I really want to help, it's time. That's where the timing piece comes in, tone, timing, tact, and then finally transparency. Anytime you're gonna have a hard conversation, you need to be able to own something at the front end or say, hey, I need to have a conversation with you in this particular direction, but there's a couple things I wanna, just before I go there, I feel like and you just are very transparent. Because transparency is just gonna kind of open up that window of opportunity and to be like, hey, we're in this together kind of thing versus you. So I feel like that's how I think, because hard conversations can be all of this, like even a life giver, like for us to be able to know how to do that as a like even now you're laughing, we're all joking, because that having hard conversations, particularly in this day and age too, even around social issues, personal issues, it feels like we're all so nervous about having the hard, honest conversations. And so at least for me, I'm just at a place in my life, I'm 53 years old. Not that I don't care, but it's like, here's the deal. I can't judge whether this was an effective conversation or a helpful conversation based upon the other person's response. I'm gonna do everything I can to be tact, tone, transparency, but then I have to just let it be. And just let it be. And also I just keep reminding myself, it is likely that I might be the only person in this 5-year period that's ever gonna have this conversation with this person. And even very practically, so I hire students all the time in my office. I fire people all the time. So the joke is, like, he's so nice, I fire people that I hire. And actually it's devastating for these students.
And what do you?
But it's low stakes. It's low stakes, so.
If you fire more.
I have more than I hire. It's the playoffs. But the reality is, like, people are like, and people will come back to me 5-7 years later, thank you so much. I realize now, I'm not just gonna fire them, I'm gonna actually give warnings and have conversations with them. But most young people don't understand there's consequences to their choices. Can I define maturity for you? Maturity is the ability not only to make choices for yourself, but to accept the consequences of those choices. And this generation, your generation, right? Like I said, no one, they're so shocked. Well, when they fail a class, when they've been warned 3 times for plagiarism, they're so shocked when there's a real consequence.
You get warnings for plagiarism?
There's just so many, like, we're just so shocked. Yeah, anyway.
Back when I was taking GSW,
We're off.
Excel.
All right, we wrap this up. It is 9 o'clock. It's been great being with you. So we can keep the conversation going. So I'm gonna look to Tony if he wants to invite others, or if you want to gather together for maybe one more session. We can set aside some time to do that. Feel free, if you want to grab an extra book and you want to give that to someone.